All right, good afternoon, everyone. Want to welcome everyone to our work session for this evening. And thanks to all of you on the council for being able to make this work today so we can focus on our strategic planning. Megan, would you please call the roll for the City Council work session for the City of Wildwood for Monday, February 22, 2021.
Mayor Blair.
Here.
Councilmember Garzano.
Present.
Councilmember Flasher.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson.
Teresa.
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Turn your volume down.
Here, and Megan, you got awful feedback.
Councilmember Dodwell. Councilmember Nyan.
Here.
Councilmember Marconi. Councilmember Rose. Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Remy. Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Galani. Councilmember McCune.
Here.
Councilmember Rainbow.
Here.
Councilmember Cutchin.
Here.
Okay, so before we get to our action items, we have two of those. We have three items under information. Does any member of the council wish to discuss any of those three, or do you have any questions about those three before we move to action items? All right, seeing none, we'll move to action items. And the first, of course, is our strategic planning. And I just want to give a little background on this in case any of you may have missed the posting that Mr. Cross, our interim city administrator, made today with the agenda on this item. So you may recall from our last meeting where we addressed strategic planning that we had reached the point, we finished phase one of our three phases, and we're now in phase two, which is to identify and then prioritize our sub goals of each of the 8 overall strategic plan goals. And then the next and last step of phase two will be to determine the source of funds for those. So at the last meeting, when we discussed this, we agreed that the council, those that wanted to do it, and I think virtually all of you did, would send a prioritization from your perspective of the various sub-plan goals, and then our city administrator would tabulate those and list them in priority. And so that really completes the first part of phase two. And so we have that before you. It was posted. I'm sorry, Councilor Remy? Did you want to speak? Oh, okay. You must. Okay, that's all right. I thought your screen came on there. My apology. So, so that's what our city administrator was putting together. And in addition to that, I asked him, and I'm assuming no one would disagree with this, to make your determinations and analyses more informative, to include columns on this page that are now shown off to the right, that with respect to programs that are basically in the works, if you will, the first column is total cost to the city over the next 5 years. The second column is the expected matching funds amount. And the last column is when that funding, second to last column is when that funding expires. And then the last column is how much the city has spent to date. And so my reasoning for suggesting, in addition to what I asked the council to do at the last discussion of this, the reason I thought it would be good to have this additional information on this sheet simply is because it would presumably affect what you may think relative to that prioritization. For example, if a particular project has matching funds that are about to expire, that might cause you to want to move it up a little higher, or vice versa. So it's really just additional information that I wanted you to have. So what we have before us this evening to do is to make, since we've done a lot of the legwork so far, is to make sure that everyone on the council is good with and agreeable with, in other words, the prioritization that we have for each of our 8 goals. And so what I thought we would do, if there's no objection, is simply take the 8 or these sub goals as they are listed under each of our 8 goals, one at a time from top to bottom. And if there's agreement, then we'll move to on the prioritization. This is just on the prioritization, not funding. We'll get to that a little later, hopefully. So if there's agreement on the prioritization for the particular goal, we'll move to the next one. If there isn't, please mention which one you would like to change and why, and then the council can discuss that and decide if it wants to rearrange what it's voted on relative to these. So is that a fair plan with everyone before we start? Councilmember Dodwell.
Is there any opportunity to have the list up on the screen to make sure that we're all reviewing the same list, or?
That's a great question, and I'll defer to Julian, our technology whiz, relative to that.
I can do that if it's all right with you.
I don't see a problem with that. The only thing is I want to make sure that I can still see hands and people wanting to speak. Is that going to be possible even though we have that on the screen?
You would not be able to see the full screen of videos. You'd have to look for the raise hands instead. So everybody would have to use that function.
Okay, so if everyone is okay with using the raise hand feature, because I know I do see a lot of hands raised during these meetings and you know, call on you from that basis. So if there's what's the opinion of the council? Do you want to see the list on the screen? Okay. So that's what we want to do then. And so Julian, if you'll put that up, and if everyone will agree to use the raise hand feature, that will help me make sure that we get everyone called on. All right, so there you go. And the first one is rural internet, and it speaks for itself. There are no sub goals, so we're off to a rapid start. So now let's go to the next one, which is financial resource development. And we have 4 goals under this that have been prioritized. The last 2 were a tie. Revenue threats and opportunities, examination of those, the long-term financial plan for the city, developing that, monitoring the Wayfair legislation, which for the public's benefit that may be unaware, that's legislation that is going to be involved on at a state level relative to internet tax to replenish money to not just Wildwood, but other municipalities that have lost that by virtue of internet sales, and new revenue sources. So does anyone wish to rearrange the priority of any of those 4?
Mayor, there is a hand raised. 2 hands raised.
Okay, hold on. Councilmember Bros.
Yeah, I'd raise mine during rural internet, but you know, if I look across there and I don't see any numbers, it would suggest we haven't spent anything on rural internet, which I know the city has. So, you know, at least with respect to the project on a going forward basis, I would think we'd want to at least include the consulting fees. But to see it all blank, maybe they just go back and rethink that a little bit. But
No, I think
that was.
Yeah, that's a great point. We certainly have spent money on rural internet. City Administrator Cross says he's going to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Prost. The numbers that we've identified here relate to the sub goals. So clearly, I mean, rural internet is the top goal. So if we want to identify, but the numbers in the last 4 columns only related to those sub goals so that we could prioritize the sub goals. Internet's internet, and we know that that's the #1 goal. That's why you don't see anything in there, because that's not going to change.
So that said, given that we don't have any sub goals under that, if we can just readily, Joe Vinich, are you on the meeting with us here?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I sure
I thought
am.
I saw you. Okay. I'm assuming you have a rough number that we could stick in there as to what we've spent to date approximately. If you do, could you give us that number?
The majority of the spending that's been accommodated for rural internet access has been to CTC, technology and energy. And I want to say we're probably somewhere around $40,000.
Well, I'm talking about polls and everything else we've done since the beginning on this.
Oh, well, that's probably about $750,000 as
That's
I
what
recall.
thought. Yeah. Okay. All right. Councilor Roast, anything further?
No, not on the rural internet. I just, I think it's important to note that, even for folks that are frustrated like me with the progress, the city has spent money on rural internet. And this summary would suggest the city has not spent any money. So I just want to make that point.
Yep. So what we'll do is we can update the attachment and repost it just to make sure that if anyone were to look at this, they would not be misled by that. And I appreciate you bringing that up. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, I just have a suggestion. Some of this, can we define the sub goals? Like, I don't know, long-term financial plan, that's just an example. What does that mean? And we get down further, then there's safety issues. So some of the other sub goals have safety mentioned in them. So can we kind of like define some of these?
It's a great question. And I think to the extent we can do that, we will. So let's take these one at a time that we're on. Revenue threats, opportunities. I think that is fairly self-explanatory. The long-term financial plan, I'm assuming that means a 5-year financial plan for the city, but whomever brought that up and put it on the table, if you're on the call on the Zoom meeting this evening, if you want to explain that further, now would be the time. Otherwise, that's what we're going to assume that to be. Okay, so 5-year financial plan. Wayfair legislation, I think that speaks for itself. New revenue sources, my recollection is from our discussion that has to do with identifying potential new revenue sources, such as charging for events and so forth, which the committee of the 3 chairs of our standing committees is currently looking at. Whoever brought that to the forefront, if you have any different opinion on that, please let us know. Otherwise, that's what we'll just add the word identify new revenue sources to make it clear. Okay, Councilmember McCune.
Ms. McCutcheon answered my question.
Okay, Councilmember Remy.
Yeah, just a quick question. So, okay, so the way that I'm reading this matrix is that, so rural internet has a total of 12. So these are not pitted against one another, correct? Or are they? So like, for instance, improvement of watersheds, it's got a score of 13. So
yeah, at the moment, they are not pitted against each other, to use your words.
Yeah.
This is just, all we're doing at the moment is making sure that everyone's in agreement. Well, number one, per Councilmember McCutcheon's suggestion, making sure that we understand what these sub goals, the titles are. And secondly, making sure that everyone on the council is in agreement with where they are prioritized based on your votes that you've already submitted. So in other words, the only reason we would change the order is if someone disagrees with how that ultimate vote came out. But and that's shown on the far left side in ranking. Now, in terms of the competition, if you will, among these various things, obviously, since we don't have unlimited funds, and it's going to depend on how the council decides that some of these things should, or all these things should be funded. I expect that as these things usually go, there will come a point where there will be some debate, and if it's not open debate, it will be in your minds an internal analysis as to whether you favor doing some of these more than others on a financial proposition basis. But we have not got to that yet, but you'll certainly know it when we do, I guarantee you.
Okay, and so perfect. So one thing I would just say is, I think that rural internet is too broad. And I think that we probably need to refine it down to sub goals as well. Because I think, first of all, the word rural internet is a bit of a misnomer, as we've learned substantially that there are a number of people that don't live in the more rural areas of Wildwood that have suboptimal access or at least delivery of internet options. And so I think that I would probably consider creating subgroup, and it could be as simple as it's no access currently to rural internet, and improved access or improved connection from where you don't have it, to cost benefit to some people who are just paying astronomical amounts for their internet based off of bandwidth needs, et cetera, if they've got family and other needs based off the current pandemic. I think we should probably refine some strategic sub-goals. The second thing is erosion control. I think those are two nice but I think there's a fair amount more in that erosion control as well that probably are included, although I think there's some substantial overlap between those two, and then there's a bunch in public works that probably carry overs, thinking about Woods Road and some other areas. So we may want to consider reorganizing or restructuring some of those sub goals into other pots, if you will.
Okay, so we're going to get to erode. We're taking these one at a time based on the goals. And so once we're done with rural internet, and then the next one, financial resource development, we're going to go to erosion control, and we can consider that. So Councilmember Remy, you had two, I felt like good suggestions for sub goals under rural internet, sort of saying it like it is, and correct me if I'm wrong. The first one was improved connectivity for residents without it, and the second was improved costs for those that are underserved on a cost basis. Is that a fair characterization of your two proposed sub goals for that?
It is, and I would actually, I would also submit that we might also want to consider altering the name rural internet to just being internet access or something different, because I think to the people that live in, say, Ward 3 or Ward 2 that have no connection, they don't consider themselves in the rural part of Wildwood per se. And I think you're going to lose perhaps some citizen interest to push this forward in a way that's going to be meaningful for everyone in the city, because they feel that they're disconnected from the word rural.
Okay. If the council's in agreement, I would propose we change it to internet access. Would you be agreeable to that, Councilmember Remy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there any objection to changing the goal from rural internet to internet access? City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that in a whole lot of different publications, not the least of which is the Gazette that'll be coming out soon, everything refers to rural internet. So I just want to make sure we're consistent or so forth, because that is the goal that is on a lot of printed documents.
It is, and it has been, and that's a point well taken. I think we still have the ability to look at that material in the Gazette and modify that if we need to. And also, let's just keep in mind, while this is a public document, this is a working document for the city. And relative to the terminology that we use, I think the point is well taken that there are some residents, particularly if this is going to be viewed, assuming the council adopts these two proposed sub goals, as assisting residents that may have it, but at a great expense. That could be anywhere in our city, and we have lots of spots in our city that are not considered rural. So I don't think there was any objection. So we'll reterm it internet access. And is there any objection to the two sub goals underneath that? As proposed by Councilmember Remy and in the order that I listed them and he presented them. All right, seeing none. So we will amend that accordingly. Councilmember Bertolino.
Very quickly, Mayor, I see under financial resources, to me, 1, 2, and the last one are really overlapping and interconnected. And I don't know why we have 3 different ones. I can see a great redundancy in anybody that's trying to tackle any one of those. I would recommend that we just combine them. There's really only 2 issues here. One is the long-term look and revenue sources, and the other one is the monitoring the Wayfair.
So you're proposing, I want to make sure I get this right, having what would the resulting goals be?
Number 1, number 2, and then the last one, new revenue sources, I see are greatly overlapping, and I don't know why we just don't combine those into one activity, which is long-term resource development.
Okay, so without objection, we will merge the last line, new revenue sources, with long-term financial plan for the city. Is that what you're proposing, Councilmember Bertolino?
And the first one, revenue threats and opportunities. I can't envision any group getting together us and talking about this issue without covering all 3 of those in the same discussion.
Okay. Is there any objection to merging those three, folding all three of those into one? Councilmember, do you have an objection? Councilmember McCune? Okay, I've got your hand up and I got other people ahead of you here, so I got to call members. Okay. Okay, so is there anyone who objects to that merger of those three? So we'll end up with two, that first one with the three merged into it and the monitoring of the Wayfair legislation. Is there any objection to that? All right, that's what we'll do. Councilmember Dodwell.
I was just going to recommend that maybe we change the internet access to what I put in the chat that I sent back to everybody, which was basically citywide internet access and improvements, so that it's a little bit more specific instead of just rural internet. It's a citywide internet problem. But I don't care.
Well, okay. Given where we are with the different RFPs and
That's fine.
being on the cusp of that, we may want to just leave it more general at the moment, but
Okay.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I was going to actually kind of go along with what Councilmember Bertolino was saying, that I think compressing basically our financial things into more or less one kind of overreaching thing with a long-term financial plan, everything sort of seems to fall into that. My only question would be, are we going to look at this long-term plan, this 5-year plan, as like, let's say 5 years from today, or is this sort of a kind of rolling 5-year plan? Because as we found out in the last year or so, things sometimes happen that disrupt what we have going on.
We're going to do both. And once the plan, and I would argue that the more operative part of that will be the rolling part of it. And I interpret your word rolling to mean, are we fairly consistently looking at whether we're meeting these goals? Because once the council is done with this, as I think I mentioned previously, my thought would be, if there's no objection to it, that we put all of these goals in a similar grid and assign responsibility and have a due date for it, and that we periodically have it on the agenda of the meeting to look at where we are. So if that's what you're suggesting by rolling, that's what the plan I think would be.
Yep, I just think I want to try to avoid having a 5-year plan and we don't look at it again, and then when we look back, we're like, we don't know what we did. So I think that'd be great.
City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Farmer. My experience in planning and forecasting, strategic planning, typically when you prepare a long-term plan like we've done here, or that we're working on, you have the 5-year plan. The 1-year budget each and every year is always compared to that 5-year plan to make sure that we are on track. So we're not redoing the 5-year plan unless it's necessary to do so, but the 1 year always compares that and to make sure that we are hitting those targets. So it never goes into a drawer and never to be seen for another 5 years. It's looked at really throughout the year, and especially at budget time. And that would be the plan at the end of 2021 when we undertake the budget for 2022.
Great.
Councilmember McCune. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bros.
Yeah, when it comes down to the financial resources, I would agree that it all rolls up to a long-term financial plan. But I actually like these categories because I think it puts right in the forefront things that I'll just be critical of myself as a member of this team that maybe we haven't given enough attention to. And that's certainly new revenue sources and revenue threats. I mean, we can continue to do a 5-year plan, and we may lose sight of the fact that the most important aspect of that plan is going to be new revenue sources. And I think having a line item on it will hold our feet to the fire. And
that's why it's number one as of now. And I think it'll stay there under financial resource development, which is goal number 2 out of the 8. And so I think it's got a fairly prominent position.
But I think I want to see 4 line items. Is that what you're saying, Mayor?
Well, so we did have 4, but had asked earlier if the council wanted to merge 1, 2, and 3 into one line. Because as Councilor Bertolino suggested, they seem to overlap. We're still going to have it identified by name. It's just not going to be 3 separate things. It'll be one.
Well, I had my hand up earlier to object to it, and I'll just still
Okay.
object to
All
it.
right, that's fine.
I think we just need to leave, I think it just puts it right out in front of us, because I know at the recent, like whatever that committee was to look at new revenue sources, basically at the end of that meeting, there was 0 new revenue sources. And I think that the long-term viability of the city is going to focus on new revenue. I just, and again, I'm not talking about going out and raising taxes. But I would just leave it as a line item. If everybody else wants to combine it, fine. But I think it would get neutered a little bit.
Well, let me ask you this, Councilor Rose, would you be agreeable to merging under financial resource development sub-goals 1 and 2, which would be revenue threats and opportunities, identifying those, as well as developing a long-term financial plan for the city, so that we would have 3? That would be number 1. Wayfair, unless you all change it, would be number 2, and the new revenue sources would be number 3. Would you be agreeable to that?
I'm just going to take a different approach. I think if we got rid of long-term financial plan and we focused on the other 3, we'd be better off. I think if we get hung up in just doing, 500 pages of numbers, we're losing sight of focusing on revenue threats, the Wayfair, and new revenue. I mean, we can all put budgets together, but I'm part of the team, whatever they decide. But to me, the easiest item there is to do a financial plan. We crank them out every day. But the critical part is coming up with, getting out of the box and looking at really challenging ourselves on the other items. That is what I feel is the best bang. But whichever way it goes, I'm okay.
The other thing I would just say, you caused me to think about relative to number 2, the long-term financial plan. The council actually does that in effect every year and at mid-year when it looks at the budget. So that may be something that we're already doing. So I guess my question would be, and specifically to Councilor Bertolino, let me start with you, Dave, since you brought this up. Would you be okay with keeping 1, 3, and 4 as they are and omitting long-term financial plan for the city?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I appreciate your comments, Larry. My only concern was I don't want to see 3 separate groups, either subgroups of this committee or admin public work, working on these independently. And then we find out when we try and merge the data back together, oh, I didn't know you came up with this resource. I didn't know you cut this. It's the process of how we look at these really is more concern to me than how many names we put on it. So I have no problem with eliminating number 2, as long as, maybe I should say it this way, however we approach this, it's either going to be as one group looking at all of those issues, or we're going to be stepping on each other's toes.
Well, I'm not suggesting we get rid of number 2. I'm just saying is that let's leave the 4 line items. In a year from now, let's look back and say, in the last 12 months, has any of us ever come up with a new revenue source for the city? Period.
Yeah.
I mean, we can have a long-term plan and it's going to have no new revenue source. But I like it the way it is. They're all important. I believe in planning, but I like those 4 line items just the way they are.
Okay, so we've had good discussion on this, and we're going to take a vote. How many wants to merge? Well, let's put it this way. We'll phrase the decision. How many want to leave the 4 items as they are? Please say, we're going to try a voice vote on this. Please say aye.
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 How many would rather merge 1, 2, and 3 or make some other variation?
I have to vote aye just because I want to have a minority vote here.
Okay. All right.
I'll second the minority vote.
Okay, so we have 2 opposed, but it looks like the majority wants to leave it as it is. And Councilmember Edens, before we wrap this up, go ahead.
You know what? I just thought there were a lot of hands and I was being competitive, and I thought I'll get in line for the public works discussion. So just circle back when we get there. Thank you.
Now, Councilmember Edens,
You can-
Did you miss me?
as strategic as that is,
I apologize.
that's okay, because when you don't get called on, guess what happens? Under Robert's rules, I think that means you go to the back of the line on the next one.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, well, I'll put it down. I'll put it back
all
up.
right. Okay. So we've had good discussion on rural internet. I think everyone's in agreement that per Councilor Remy's suggestion, we change it to internet access. We have the 2 goals he mentioned, going once, going twice, 3 times. Any objection, or it is what it is? All right. And then as to financial resource development, we have the 4 goals as they are, prioritized as they are, with some slightly new wording per Councilor McCutcheon's suggestion. Number 4 will be identify new revenue sources. And I think that's, and then long-term financial plan would be identified as 5-year financial plan. With those 2 changes and the priority going once, twice, 3 times, everyone good with that? Okay, so that takes us to erosion control. We have 2, improvement of watersheds and flood mitigation. Councilmember Remy, you had mentioned earlier when you were speaking on this that you thought there might need to be some further descriptiveness to it, if I understood you correctly. Do you want to speak to this in that regard, or no?
I'm just trying to think through. Are we better served to some of the public works and public safety aspects that are like, so number 12 on that. So flooding issues on Woods Road would certainly fit underneath that basket of the some of the things we're talking about in the erosion control arm. But I don't want to move things if we, I mean, number 9, evaluate the ditches and erosions on Valley and Strecker Road. Some of these things I think can be moved into those other baskets. So that's the only thing I'm considering. If it's be beneficial to do that.
Well, I would suggest, unless there was a reason why some of those that you're mentioning are in public works, it seems to me, I mean, at this juncture particularly, it doesn't really matter from any standpoint other than logical organization of our strategic plan. So when I see an item like you point out in number 9 of public works that speaks to controlling an evaluation of erosion issues, that to me is an erosion control issue, even though it relates to public works. The fact of the matter is erosion control in its totality probably relates to public works. So if there's no objection, I guess, do you see, let me ask you this, Ken, do you see others other than 9 in public works that you think might need to be moved over to add specificity to erosion control, if the council's okay with that?
Let's see, number 9. I would say number 12, number 13. Let me just see here after yeah, thank you. Let's see, number 17. And
17 is, oh, I'm sorry, we have.
Oh, sorry, no, I'm sorry, no, I meant to say.
Center Avenue drainage.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Okay.
And then are there more below that? I don't know, let's see.
It looks like that's it.
Yeah. I would probably just maybe think about those.
Okay. Is there any objection on the part of anyone from moving from what's now under Public Works, the item which is with 9 votes total, evaluating priority of shown as 9, evaluating the ditches and erosion issues on Valley and Strecker roads, 12, flooding issues on Woods Road, 13, overflow of water ice on Orville Road, and 17, Center Avenue drainage erosion issues. Is there any objection to moving those? Councilmember Bertolino?
Yeah, again, another minority report here. I have in my head that erosion control was in reference to our major waterways, our Bonham Creek, Cox Creek, etc., and the erosion problem there. Ditches around roads, I don't see as a general erosion problem as much as a public works issue. So I'm a little opposed to moving these. In particular, I'm looking at the one that I guess maybe that's kind of my soft spot is the Woods Road, where we promised the people on Woods Road that we would take care of that extreme flooding problem. If we move it into the erosion area and we start weighing that against Cox Creek issues and so on, I think that Woods Road issue would fall to the bottom because it doesn't affect that many people. But I think as a public service and our commitment to our populace, we've committed to doing so. So I really I'm kind of in a object here. I think those things should remain as public works, and only those things referring to our creeks would have an erosion tag to it.
Okay. Is there anyone
got a-
else?
Yeah, Mayor, this
Yes,
is,
Councilmember Garitano.
yeah, I was only thinking of something that's probably similar to what Councilmember Bertolino mentioned. Some of the items that are in the public works, they're already in execution mode or just about ready to flip the switch and get going. So it's probably more of a question or a concern that I'd be worried that they kind of get lost in the overall strategy of the watershed erosion. And some of these, we don't have the luxury of time, like Woods Road. I mean, that's already design, I think, was already in progress or completed, and Director Brown can confirm that. But I think the train has already left for some of these that I think we just want to get them wrapped up.
Okay, so is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of moving any of these four out of public works and into erosion control? If not, they'll stay where they are and we'll move on.
So can I just speak back to it? So and first of all, I appreciate Councilmember Bertolino. The only thing I would say, though, is that one might argue you've got this huge list in public works. And in fact, these issues may get prioritized at the bottom of this list. And so you've got a very small list under erosion control. Remember, these are not related to a committee per se. These are part of overall strategic planning. So you may actually get them addressed sooner if they were only in a bucket that only had currently 2 or 3 items.
So again, is there anyone who speaks in favor of moving any of these? I have your hand. Are you speaking in favor? Okay, Councilmember Clark.
I think I would be in favor of moving these to erosion control because they are eroding. Sorry. They are erosion issues, and even if they're not, but if they are prioritized according to a criteria that deems where they would go on that list. I see these lists, if you look at erosion control and public works, as needing, some of these are criteria that we've got listed as sub-goals. So if we had some other columns that are listed as urgent, safety, environment, health, infrastructure, that we can just check to see if it's an urgent, meaning either we have to do it right away for safety reason or something, or it's urgent because we've promised that we were going to do it already. Whatever it is that we need to do it right away, that just bumps it up.
Right.
But
and that's what we're going to get to on this.
Okay.
So I just want to know, right now, the discussion is whether to move these 4 items. We'll talk about safety and priority later. What you're speaking in favor, you want to move them, correct?
I would like to move them for that reason.
That's all right. So we have one more that wants to do it, Councilor Rambo.
Right, yeah, I sent it sort of an email to this effect, and Councilmember McCutcheon, Bertolino, Brost, right on down the line, we're all talking about versions of the same thing. These by nature are disorganized. That's what we're doing right now, but they also lack specificity. And so I was going to suggest something like, sub goals, which might it would clean this up and give it better organization. I'm in favor of moving some of these erosion related concerns into erosion control and making them a sub bullet under the under flood mitigation or something like that. And we can do the same thing in public works. We probably could have done that in financial resources, et cetera. So just throwing that idea on the table, I am in favor though of moving the bullet points we talked about.
Councilor McCutcheon, are you speaking on the issue of whether to move these?
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Woods Road is related to flood mitigation, and I think some of the objects in Public Works can definitely go under improvement of the watersheds or flood mitigation. So I'm in favor of moving those four.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Brost, are you speaking about moving these?
Yes, I would be okay with moving them. My question maybe, I don't know if it's for Rick, but we've got a number 21, the Center Avenue reconstruction, and then we also have the Center Avenue drainage. It would seem like those would be hand in hand and maybe should stay together.
Rick?
If he's not available, Joe Vunich should be able to speak to Center Avenue as well.
I mean, that's my only point. I don't want to move it because you know, those two projects, it would seem logical that they'd be tied together.
Rick Brown too. Okay. Did Joe respond to that question?
Mr. Mayor, I was waiting for your permission.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was engaged in sidebar here. Yeah, go ahead.
The reconstruction of Center Avenue will address the erosion and drainage issues. So they are linked together and could be combined.
That seems like a no-brainer. Is there any objection to combining Center Avenue reconstruction / erosion drainage issues into one item? So hearing no objection, that's what we'll do.
And are we moving it up under erosion control so that we can at least say we get something done in the first year?
That's that's up to the council. I guess it depends. I think that to me, the decision to the answer to your question, Councilmember Dodwell, depends on what tail's wagging the dog here. And I suspect that it's the reconstruction that's going to take care of the erosion issues rather than the reverse. So that being the case, it seems to me that's more of it ought to stay in Public Works as it is, but that's obviously a decision for the council. Councilor Brost, anything further in that regard?
No, I would think 17 should just stay where it's at because it's part of the overall reconstruction. But the other three, I'm fine with moving up. So,
okay.
But either way is fine. I just wanted
to
point that out as probably part of that project.
Councilmember Edens?
Yeah, I'm just going to offer a suggestion, especially because although these items overlap, they have gone through Public Works or will go through Public Works for allocation and vote. Instead of worrying about moving them, why don't we just add some sort of a color-coded asterisk in the future for anything that overlaps with other categories? Because some of the stuff I would like to bring up later when we go through Public Works is, for example, you know, Bluffview Parks. Well, that overlaps with the parks strategic plan as well. So I don't see anything wrong with leaving it in the area that it's budgeted for, but at least, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying everything that's erosion control related is blue, and we're going to put a blue asterisk next to this item under Public Works so that we can see how things connect, because we got really held up on a longer discussion on financial resources over prioritizing things that can happen consecutively.
I appreciate that suggestion, and I would ask if we could just table that until we kind of get to the end of this first phase of phase 2 review. And the reason I'm asking that is because my hope, and it at this moment is just a hope, it may not come to fruition, because all of these things we could argue to some degree or another overlap here and there and everywhere. Financial planning, for example, overlaps with virtually all of these things. My preference would be for, if we can do it, and I don't know that we can, so that's why I'm saying if you'd be willing to table that, if we can get, for whatever these items are, one line item, and that's our go-to spot for this, rather than having refer over here and refer over there and look back there and up there, I think we're going to be a lot better off in terms of being able to determine how these things are handled, i.e., do they get done, mark it off the list, rather than that mixing of it. But I could be wrong. I just,
Well, and I thought it would just eliminate the conversation on moving it, just to
Well,
acknowledge that it overlapped, and that would
yeah.
save time and would just be easier.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Cross jurisdiction. So that'll affect my vote. So if I know in the future that it's going to be acknowledged as a larger erosion control issue, I'd like to keep it under the public works section. So that's just where I
Okay,
stand.
so we can potentially do that. Like I say, let's see if we can get through the prioritization, and then we'll see if we want to do overlap on these. And if you, Councilor Brost, if you don't want to talk any further, if you could take down your hand there so I can call on someone else here and make sure I get everyone in order. Thank you. And Councilor McCune, you have your hand up. You had actually asked a question. If you'd put in the text box, I think, if your question was if some of these sub goals are already in the works and are immediate in nature, then why are they here for discussion? I think that was your question. The reason for that is because given what the council may ultimately come up with in terms of whether it wants to, how it wants to effectuate some of these, it is possible, at least in theory, that you and the other council could say, you know what, I understand that bridge number 386 or whatever has been in the works, but I no longer think, given what I see in front of me and the money at hand, that we want to do that. So let's take it off the list. So it's here we put everything in the kitchen sink for discussion. It may remain and probably will, but it may not. And that's why it's here. Okay. And do you want to say anything further?
Yeah, just in light of time, it's going on 6 o'clock and it looks like we have a whole slew. I was just going to recommend that now we understand what we're trying to do with all these different line items. And I think I have a better understanding now coming into the meeting that maybe I recommend that we postpone this, get to the other work session agenda items so we can clear those out and then maybe see where we land here, or just have another work session coming out or discussions through email. So we have this lined better. I think we just keep going over one thing at a time and you see how many are here. But I think I have a better understanding. I think other people do, to try to mash these together now. I didn't know that when we got the original request, and what Mr. Cross provided today was very helpful. So now I understand the objective, and I don't know what other council members do, but I just think we have a long way to go.
We do have a long way to go. And so let me just say this. I would just ask that all of us be mindful, and this is, I think we're getting through some of the learning curve stuff as we get into these things. And then when we go into the, by the time we get to economic development, for example, we're going to have a much better understanding of what everyone's expectations are. That's number one. Number two, we've got to do strategic planning, like it or not, and we need to get this done. And that's why it's item number one on the agenda, and why we started the meeting at 5 o'clock. So you're free to make a motion to postpone. I would strongly recommend we do not do that right now. I would give it a little bit longer, see if we can make it through some of these things. I'm watching the clock. I want to make sure we get to item number 2. So you have my word on that. But I would say let's try to get through this. I mean, you can make your motion if you want. I would suggest
No, I just want to make sure that we hit the other items and that we don't get too far into the middle of this and we have to stop.
I'm doing my best to move this as fast as I can. Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you. All right, so we've had a lot of discussion on whether to move what is now, I believe, by consensus, 3 items, item 9, 12, and 13 out of Public Works and into erosion control. Voice vote, all in favor of doing that, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
Councilmember Edens, any other opposed? Okay, seeing no other opposed, they'll be moved into erosion control. In addition, and we're getting ready to go into Public Works, we've changed Center Avenue reconstruction to one and Center Avenue erosion issues. Those two have been merged into one line remaining in Public Works. All right, without objection, that's what we're going to do there. Councilmember Remy, just to close the loop on erosion control before we get the final sign off, anything else you want to add relative to erosion control?
No, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Bertolino.
No, I was going to talk on Public Works.
All right, we're getting there. So erosion control with the 2 items plus that are there, plus the other 3. Let's see, ditches, erosion issues. I would submit per Councilmember Rambo's suggestion that item 12, flooding issue on Woods Road is actually a sub goal under number 2. If you don't have any objection to that, and actually an item 13, overflow, that's a flood issue. So is there any objection to putting 12 and 13 under flood mitigation and putting evaluation of ditches and erosion on Valley and Strecker as a separate line 3 under erosion controls? Or any objection to handling it that way? Seeing no objection, that's what it is. Going once, twice, erosion control is done. Now we are into Public Works, and this, as you know, is a big list, but we've actually taken a few out here. And so if there's no objection, I really have 2 questions for the council on Public Works. And the first one is, and Dave, I'm going to call on you, or Councilmember Bertolino, I'm going to call on you in just one moment. I just want to throw this out for everyone to start thinking about. So 2 things I'm going to ask you on this one. Number 1, as we've done with everything else, whether there's anything here that you want to prioritize or merge together. And then number 2, while we're at it, and this is per Councilmember Rambo's suggestion early under, for example, erosion control, do you see any sub goals, categories that we could fold some of these into to make it a little better in terms of understanding of the public and us? So those are my 2 questions. And with that, Councilmember Bertolino.
Very quickly, I think the number 5, general safety issues, although it got a fairly high rating, I think it's far too general. Just about everything on this list in some way impacts safety. So I would like to remove that general safety issue category.
Is there any objection to removing item 5, general safety issues? Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah, I don't know that it has to stay where it is, general safety issues, but I think there's a lot of safety issues on here that maybe we could have that as a sub goal, safety, and then list those projects underneath that.
Okay, and I'm seeing, so if everyone will just indulge me for a minute, I'm seeing item 2, Highway 100 safety issues by its name. I'm seeing item 6, pedestrian safety improvements. Item 7, left turn sign along West Glen Farms Drive. That's in your wards, Councilmember McCutcheon and Bertolino. Would you have an objection to moving that under general
That's
safety?
actually, I'm sorry, that's actually Ward 4.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apology. Ward 4. The Ward
We'll
4.
take it.
What do you think about that, Councilmembers Dodwell and Farmer?
What, moving it under the general safety issues?
Yes.
Or?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
All right, we got agreement there. Item 14, left turn lane at West Glen Farms Drive and Truman. Item 15, right-hand turn lane at Oak Ridge. 17, a stoplight at Route 109 and Babler Elementary. I'm sorry.
I know there's 217.
Okay, well, it's a second 17. Install a stoplight on Route 109. 23, stop sign at Fullerton Meadows. And
Hey, Jim,
I think
sorry to
that's
interrupt.
it, according to my list. So if you want me, I'm sorry. And Route 109 and BA South Roundabout.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the median improvements for Pine Grover Parkway and Fullerton Meadows, there is a safety issue on Pine Grover Parkway. Been told that cars are passing each other.
Okay, so we'll add that. Okay, so if there's no, here's my question. Is there any objection to folding the following items under that what will now be our sub goal of general safety issues?
Point of
And
information.
actually, if we're going to, if you'll just bear with me just one second, if you'll just bear with me. And if we're going to do this, and that's an if, you haven't decided yet, I think we removed the word general because now we're making it more specific and we just call it safety issues. So those would be item 2, Highway 100 safety issues. Item 3, Route 109 BA roundabout. Item 6, pedestrian safety improvements. Item 7, left turn lane, Westland Farms, Truman Road. 14, left turn lane at Westland Farms, Truman Drive. 15, right-hand turn lane at Oak Ridge and Garden Valley. 17, the second 17, stoplight at Route 109 Babbler. 23, stop sign at Fullerton Meadows. 25, median improvements for both Pond Grover Parkway and Fullerton Meadows. So those are the items. Councilmember Edens, any comment on any of those?
Yes, I have a question. I just want to make sure I understand. Once we add those as subcategories, though, everything in that category then becomes higher ranked than everything else. So my only concern is, do I think it goes in
Nope.
general safety?
Nope.
Sure.
Nope.
But now,
That's not the case. They're not
So-
going to change their priority. Just because they're folded into a broader category does not mean their priority changes.
okay, because right now general safety is number 5. That's why I'm concerned, because I don't think adding new turn lanes should rank above number 10. but
General safety as a number 5 will be deleted because it's going to become a category in and of itself, but all those goals under it, and the reasoning the council member, I think Councilmember Bertolino suggested, is because it wasn't descriptive enough. So it really isn't bringing it.
So
So
it's
it's
no
going to,
longer under that broad public works one, then it's its own little thing off to the side.
with the same prioritization as what we have.
Okay, let me ask one more question then. With deer management, because there are a lot of deer related accidents, does that qualify as general safety or no? It's kind of a rhetorical question.
My opinion is it dovetails, but not sufficiently to put it in at this point in that
Okay.
category. But
Thank you for answering my question. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't
Okay.
screwing up the ranking.
That's all right. No,
I'm good
that's
now,
good.
but I
I
do have a
think-
comment on public works in addition.
Okay, we're going to come back to that in just a second. So speaking only to folding in these items under general safety, Councilmember Clark, you speaking on that or something different? Okay, go ahead.
I still don't see safety as being a specific line item under Public Works for a goal. A goal of safety isn't specific enough to be a SMART goal. So I would say, if we have each one of these, categorize each one of these and make a check by it if it's safety or not, just to help us prioritize. If we start moving these around and saying they're general safety items, we could do that and have a heading for many of these items. Are these infrastructure? Is it under the heading infrastructure? Is it under the heading of environmental? So safety to me is a criteria, not a goal.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Garetano, speaking on whether to fold these into a new general safety subcategory.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment or observation here. Like, there are a couple of items like the stop sign or the left turn sign, and I see these as minor items that should follow a normal process where we already have the Board of Public Safety, and if they deem that a sign needs to be placed, we should be able to get it done. And I think the cost is only a few $100s. So I feel like there might be some of these that may not necessarily need to be on like a big strategy plan like this.
And we're going to get to that. The question right now, though, is just where to place them on the page. We're going to get to that. Councilmember Farmer.
I'm all for moving this stuff around. I was just going to clarify, put in the little chat that the West Glen Farms Truman Road, it should be a no left turn sign, not needing a new left turn lane. So as Councilmember Garetano said, that might actually be a pretty easy thing to just get put into, one of the quick committees, but I guess if we want to build a lane there, we can, but really we just need a sign stopping
Okay,
people
thank
from
you.
turning.
Yes, we like that because that's not going to cost nearly as much. Okay, so council members, we've had a lot of discussion on whether to fold these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 items into not changing their priority, just putting them under what will be general safety issues, or I would suggest safety issues, and it will be gone as a number 5 since each of these will be prioritized in their own right. All in favor of that, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have one opposed. Councilmember Clark, any other opposed? Okay, so now the question is, and we've removed the 3 items, or the 4 items noted earlier, lines 9, 12, 13, and 17 is now folded in with 21, so 17 is gone. All right, so now the question for the council is on public safety issues, that these are now prioritized in front of you, whether you want to change any of the priority. That's the sole question at the moment before we move on. Councilmember Edens.
Yeah. I have a couple of comments, and one is, while I realize we are deciding if maybe we still want to continue certain things as a priority, sometimes you got to get while the getting's good. And if there are grants available and you have already spent some money, I'm of the mindset that right now we're kind of in for a penny, in for a pound. I would almost do a category still under Public Works as continuation of existing projects with ongoing expense, the rest of them listed. The other thing too is I just thought it was interesting, you know, when you do polling, you do internal consistency tests when you see if you restate the question in a different way, if it's still the same type of priority. And I noticed a couple of things, and it could be because, you know, Bluffview Park, for example, is under Public Works, but is more of a green space issue. And extension of the Main Street Crestview Drive is number 4. Yet when we consider that and we would look at, for example, enhanced green space, the completion of the Village Green is number 1. Well, you can argue that if it's number 1 there, maybe Main Street and Crestview Drive should also be moved up. And then if you're saying that we're maintaining existing parks instead of building new parks, and that's a big goal of green space, number 4, then why is Bluffview Parks number 24? And if maintaining parks is important, it's odd that we ranked the Village Green maybe a little bit more important. So I just want to point that out, is that this list needs to be flexible and not a written in stone. Everything has to be in this order because we've got categories that contradict each other. And I just want to make sure that the council and staff see it as the same flexible list that I see it as because of that, right? So, you know, it would make no sense if we didn't consider that as a whole. So again, I would move up any project that we have already spent expenditures on or would be moving the grant process along with. So for example, number 22, I would move up and just make a general statement of ongoing projects, right? Strecker Road sidewalk, ongoing project. We just did a grant for, you know, Highway 100 stuff. That's technically ongoing. Deer management, I was pretty sure we did have some costs on that with the police department.
Okay, so you're suggesting that we have another subcategory of ongoing projects and move anything in there? I think I heard you say 2 different things. Are you saying only those that we have matching grant funds, or anything that we've spent money on currently?
We've spent money on, yeah, because you know we've talked about how we move things around as a whole, and I ranked, you know, rural internet and erosion control as my 2 biggest issues for the city, but that didn't mean I didn't want anything else finished. We'd already started.
Okay. And before we get to that, my question is, do you have, because the seminal issue right now is, do you have any change in the prior, other than, and it's not going to change the priority if the council wants to create that subtopic, but while you're on the floor, is there anything here as prioritized that you think should be changed? Because that's what we're trying.
Well, as long as that topic's created, because we've already, you know, approved, I thought, money working with anything that's in this separate attachment, right? The Wild Horse Creek Bridge, you know, we've already got money budgeted through 2023, and we've already spent money to date. So, you know, there's no reason why that isn't considered simultaneous.
Okay. My question is there anything priority on a priority basis, these 1 through whatever we're left with now, maybe 19, that you think should be changed? And if so, which one is it?
As long as they're moved into a category and continuing projects is ranked 5, and I'm okay.
Okay. So does anyone else favor adding an ongoing project subcategory and moving anything into that that the city has spent money on today. Does anyone else want to speak in favor of that?
Slash approved in committee.
Slash approved in committee. Does anyone else want to speak in favor of that? Okay, so I don't see anyone else, so I'm going to take that as a no. Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A comment and a question. Comment is, I've been on the council for 9 years. This is the best discussion of objectives that I have experienced in the 9 years. And I thank you all for your input and I see Katie shaking her head, and maybe Deb is doing the same. This is a great process. All right, enough of that. No, the question, and maybe Joe or Rick, Manchester Road Trail. That improvement is the approval or non-approval of the new subdivision going to have an impact on that trail? And should we wait on this item until that new subdivision is either approved or disapproved?
Joe?
The trail is fully funded regardless if the subdivision were to proceed or not, meaning that the federal grant is in place and there have been commitments on the part of the city to provide the matching component. The only outcome of the subdivision, if positive, is that we would expect them to either reimburse or build, so as there's a cost savings to the city.
So I think the short answer is the only interface between those two is who's going to pay for it. Correct?
Yes, if the subdivision proceeds forward, we would expect them to participate and reduce the cost to the city.
Councilmember Bertolino, anything you want to do with that in light of that answer, or you want to leave it alone?
No, I just wanted to kind of bring it up. It's probably if we believe this should go forward, the only thing is an upside if that development goes through, there's an upside. If it doesn't go through, there's no great downside. Is that correct, Joe? Financially.
Generally speaking, but this matter was discussed at Planning and Zoning Commission last Tuesday night, and there are some timelines relating to the federal grant. So again, I would assure you that if the subdivision does proceed forward, there will be an effort to recoup money from the developer for the expenditure the city makes.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I have a question for the council before we take a vote on the priority. Speaking of subtopics within our goals, we've got, it looks like 4 or 5 remaining items that relate specifically to thoroughfare street issues, such as number 4, extension of Main Street, Crestview Drive, number 10, the bridges. I'm sorry, I missed number 8 before that, Old State Road Roundabout. Would there be any sentiment on the part of the council to creating a category that would be titled road/bridge improvements, so that we can keep these organized under that? Anyone
I
want
was
to do
just
that?
going to send an email on that one, Mayor.
To do it or not?
Yeah, to do it.
Okay.
To do it. So I'm
So,
for it.
so would there be any objection to having that, and it would end to including the following items? Number 4, extension of Main Street Crestview Drive to Route 100. 8, Old State Ridge Road Roundabout. 10, the bridges on Wild Horse Creek. 16, Manchester Taylor Road resurfacing signals. 19, roundabout at Clayton Road and Route 109. 20, road improvements in Ward 8, Etherton Road streetscape. Center Avenue reconstruction and erosion would fit in that. Manchester, nope, strike that. And I think that's it. I think that's it. So is there any objection to folding all of those, not changing the priority, into a subtopic of road/bridge improvements? No objection? It's done. All right, last question. Anyone want to rearrange the priority of anything further under Public Works, Public Safety? If not, we're moving on. Councilmember McCutcheon.
I just have a suggestion.
What is
Before we would try to go ahead and discuss priorities this evening, if we can have a clean slate, basically, with our subcategories all listed and the items listed under them, and then maybe work on priorities if anybody wants to change any priorities next week.
That's a great suggestion. So if we could just modify your suggestion a little bit, I'd like to get, let's call it presumptive preliminary buy-in from everyone on the priorities. What I'm looking at is, if there's anything here that jumps out at you that you want to change, just as we've been moving some things around here, now would be the time to do it. So if we don't hear that, there's going to be presumptive agreement that even though we're going to do what I think is a great idea, what you're suggesting at the next meeting, which is to revisit once we have a clean sheet that we can all work from, so that everyone's on the same page and we're not making any errors. But in my mind, after tonight, the presumption would be that it's probably going to stay pretty much what it is. Is that fair with you? Councilmember McCutcheon, are you okay with that?
Yes and no. I get where you're going, but because it's not a clean slate, somebody might want to discuss priorities next time.
No, and we can do that. I'm not saying you can't do that, and I'm not saying you can't change them. I'm just saying we're getting the collective buy-in tonight, and we're getting at least half the way to that. And so it's just a presumption. It can be rebutted, but the presumption in my mind would be after tonight, if there's nothing jumping out in a big way in terms of anyone wanting to move a priority, or move an item around in terms of its priority, it's probably going to stay about where it is.
I agree.
All right, Councilmember McCune.
So just for clarification on the priority. So the last one we discussed was bridges. Is that the last on the list then in the priority?
No, it's within the new subcategory of, just like we created a subcategory for, safety issues. We're creating a subcategory of road, bridge, and improvements. None of the priorities for the items that we're moving in there change. We're just moving it into a more organized format.
But the subcategories, are they put in priority listing right now as 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the presumption?
It's on the left side, that first column.
The sub? Okay. I'm following now. Thank you.
Right. And some of them got tie votes, and that's why you see 2 17s or more. Okay. Anything further relative to Councilmember Raymond?
Yeah, just real quickly. I want to be clear that we'll get a chance after this rejiggering is going to make things lots clearer. And I hope we get a chance to weigh in one final time on the priorities as we've captured them today. I don't know if it's worth doing the whole vote thing, or if we can just say, hey, I have a serious problem with this in the next couple of days as soon as Steve gets it back to us. Is that possible?
We're going to handle that here. And I want to see how the rest of this
goes. Sorry.
Do that. Okay, Councilmember McCune, are you up again, or you want to take your hand down? Okay, take your hand down, please. Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes, I just wanted to double check and see, do we need a trail park improvements category under Public Works? Because we've got Public Works activity going on at Bluffview Park, and we've got a trail upgrade as well. So I just didn't, yes, the Manchester Road Trail, number 22.
Let me see how many trail items we have here.
I only found 2, but.
Yeah, I would suggest, well, there's no objection. We can put those under that. Is there any objection to further adding that subcategory?
I just think over the next 5 years, we'll see additional improvements that may need to be made. So we would have then a category that we could possibly add to.
What'd you call it?
Trail park improvements.
Trail park improvements. So there's no objection. We'll have trail park improvements, and we're going to throw into that the Bluffview and
number 24 and number 16. Nope, wrong. Where did I find it? 22. Thank you.
And 22. All right. Okay. So Councilor Rambo, again, or you got your hand up?
Yeah, just line item 9 in enhanced green space is a new pedestrian trail, and that
Oh,
probably
yes.
should go in the same
Thank you.
category. Or maybe all the trail stuff should go under green space.
Which one is that? I'm sorry.
Well, under enhanced green space, we have number 9, new pedestrian trail. And I'm suggesting that either that goes in the public works category along with the ones that Councilmember Dodwell suggested, or we move the ones that she's picking out, or that we're all picking out, I guess, into enhanced green space, one or the other.
I appreciate that suggestion. I would suggest we wait until we have the discussion on green space, since we don't know where that's going to go. There might be some interrelationship within green space that we don't.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
So I've made a note off to the side.
Put a pin in that.
We'll come back to it, but let's do it within green space. Okay, thank you. All right. Seeing no further discussion, is everyone good with what we have done in the current prioritization, subject to seeing it at the next meeting, as Councilmember McCutcheon pointed out, in public works and public safety? Once, twice, 3 times, it's gone and done. Thank you. Moving next to administration, we've got 13 items. Does anyone have anything in administration that they don't like in terms of its prioritization? Or do you see anything that you would like to arrange under another topic within, a broad topic within administration? Councilmember Rambo.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Item number 1, multi-year plan for citywide staff growth, either a separate bullet or in addition to that, like, for example, staff growth and retention, or words to that effect, because
okay. Without objection, we'll add retention to the end of it. I think those two seem to me to be overlapping. Is there any objection to adding retention to staff growth / retention?
I was going to suggest for something like this is called workforce planning. So if you want to simplify it, you can just call it workforce planning, and that's what that is.
Councilor Rambo, workforce planning. Sure, that's fine. All right, so you're saying, Councilmember Garetano, to change item 1 to workforce planning. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
Okay, is there any objection to that? All right, seeing no objection, it's changed. Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I would like to move number 6 up to number 2. We do have a different type of emergency operations plan. I know when this was brought up, it was supposed to be a little more comprehensive and include some other things. So it's not that it's not that important. It's just that so many of these things in other categories, and including administration, are contingent on networking with other levels of government. You know, Wayfair legislation monitoring, that requires number 6. Grant funding requires number 6. Rural internet, erosion control money requires number 6. So we've ranked all these things higher, but the tool that gets us there is number 6. So it's not competing with number 2 as it is, because this is something that should be simultaneously happening as part of our government procedure. So to make everything else function, I think number 6 got to move up.
Okay, so is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of moving number 6 to what would become number 3? I think that's dying on the vine, so I'm sorry about that. All right, Councilmember McCutcheon.
If I could guess, go ahead.
So I'm going to kind of mention the same thing that Councilmember Edens did. Don't we already have an emergency contingency operations plan?
We do. We do have that.
And it's on the list because?
Councilmember Clark added that, I think. Councilmember Clark.
Okay, thank you.
You want to speak to that question?
Sure. What we have is an emergency operations plan. We don't have a contingency plan for if there's an emergency, what do we do? There's different documents that we would have to go through, and I've gone through this with Mr. Cross, that you know, the different documents involved, and we would have to go through each one of them, the county's emergency operation plan, because they are in charge of emergencies. And we also have a state emergency plan. But when I went through all of them, they all have something different for each of us to be ready to do in the case of an emergency, if there was a earthquake or something like that.
So she's saying it's a little different. My apology. I saw that title and thought they were the same, but apparently she's speaking to something different. Okay, Councilman Remy.
Sure. Just curious, is there any way to simplify this even further and consider, and I'm just throwing this out as an option, to consider 3, 5, 7, and 9 as more or less pretty similar, and we can just develop an actual way to simplify them? Because the way that I see, I mean, maybe not 5, but 3, 7, and 9 certainly have a lot of overlap, and we may be able to reduce the number of items underneath this by actually simplifying this and then honestly just creating it a little bit more broad.
So I would suggest, that's a great observation. And much like what we've done already, if you or anyone else for that matter has a better subtopic, I would suggest project planning and implementation as the goal that we would fold these 3 under as specific goals. Is that agreeable to you, Councilmember Remy?
I think if you add the word dissemination after that, you get number 7 in there.
Well, I would argue, I mean, we can add it. I would argue reporting tools are within the scope of that, but we can add dissemination. I'm not going to quibble on that one. And Councilmember Clark, I know many of these, if not all of them, came from you. So I'm going to ask, would you be agreeable to that? Okay. Anyone object to that? So no one objects. So we're going to have that new subcategory and items, goals, rather, sub-goals 3.
Could you repeat that again, Mayor? I apologize.
That's okay. Yep. So I hope I remember what I said. Council, what do you have record of what I call that, City Clerk Eldridge? Project planning, implementation, and dissemination.
I got another one for you if you want to consider a simpler name. Portfolio management.
I like that. Councilor Remy, are you good with that?
I am more than fine with that.
Councilmember Clark, are you okay with that? Okay. Is there any objection by anyone else to that category? Thank you, topic. Thank you, Councilmember Garitano, for keeping us simple here. All right, so that's what it's going to be. All right. Again, the issue before the council is, do any of you see any priorities here that you think should be, or goals that you think should be removed or rearranged? Councilmember McCune.
I believe Councilmember Remy brought this up about the West, I guess it's line nine, I'm sorry, I can't even talk. Number 8, work with other West County municipalities regarding common issues for West County Drug Task Force. I guess I just want a little bit more clarity on it, because under the St. Louis County jurisdiction, they have every division from the DEA to different drug tasks already, and each municipality has, each department participates at that and sends people down to the DEA to work together. So I think that's already been established. So I didn't know why one that's under administration, I'm not against it at all, but I don't know why this has become the City of Wildwood issue, since county already participates in this and we contract with them. So that was my first question. So I don't know if that's necessarily needed on administration, or we need to put more money when it's already happening. And I think we can just work with county. So that was my first question. And then the adding Braille to all information signs in city parks and trails, a little confused on administration. I think that needs to go back to where the parks department is and not administration. And I think it's important, but I don't know how it's under administration. So just clarity and questions.
Okay, so we're going to take these one at a time. Kim, I know you had the suggestion for the drug item, and I know I would just ask if you can in 1 or 2 sentences tell us why, or tell the council why you think it should, in response to Councilor McCune's question, be a separate item for the city. And please be mindful. I know you're passionate about this, so in the interest of time, you got a couple of sentences you can tell us why you think it ought to stay where it is.
I don't think it's going to be a costly agenda item for us strategically. I agree that there are currently other actions that are being done at the county and DEA level. I think but unfortunately they may be suboptimal right now dealing with the threat that this certainly incurs to West County. I think there's an opportunity where we could partner with neighboring areas to try to improve the dissemination of the current work that's being done.
So Councilor McCune, do you want to suggest that it be moved, or you're going to keep it?
I see where you're going with it. I just jurisdictional issues and trying to.
Question is, do you want to keep it or
I'd keep it, but I'd move it down in the priority list.
okay, does anyone else want to move that down on the priority list?
I think it's already funded.
A comment on that, but not necessarily moving it down the list, but maybe a different way of looking at it.
A different one. I'm sorry.
Mayor, if I could speak to that. Looking at number 8 and also number 6, I think the common theme here is just intergovernmental relations. And I do see that the drug task force was called out, but I think it's a broader issue. We have a lot of other issues that we can work with other municipalities, the state, and so forth. So I would suggest if combining number 6 and number 8 and just call it a prioritization item of intergovernmental relations, that might cover it all.
Councilmember McCune, what do you think of that?
I like that idea.
Okay. Does anyone object to folding, as Councilor Garitano suggested, those two items into intergovernmental relations? And we will give them, you did mention where you want to place them, Councilor Garitano, in terms of the goals, but if we're folding two together, I would assume you mean to keep it at the goal of the most important one, which would be as goal 6. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so it's going to, any objection to that by anyone in the meeting? All right, so that is done. And then Councilmember McCune, you had a suggestion that to move the Braille and was it items 12 and 13 and the interpreter, or just one item? Was it just 12? To where did you want to move that?
I just had a question. Why did it fall under administration?
As opposed to what?
I'm sorry.
As opposed to what?
Under the parks, since it was more directed to city parks and trails. We just talked about different trails. Mhm.
Okay. Do you want to propose, I mean, in terms of the priority, well, I'm not going to say that either.
I think it's Councilmember Clark's suggestion, and I would just want to work with you. I think it might get more priority on the parks.
Hold on. We'll get to Councilmember Clark. My question to you is, are you suggesting we move line 12 to public works?
It would be, I guess, if they're included 12 and 13 on the permission of Councilmember Clark, if she's in agreement for it, so she can get.
So you would propose that?
I would propose that for her comment, yes.
Okay, and if you did that, what would you prioritize them as?
Under the parks and trails, I know that's a moving thing where we were just talking about the trail improvements with Bluffview.
Well, but the problem is you're moving, if we do that, they have their own current priority of 12 and 13 under this goal, which is below public works. The broad goal of the administration is below public works. So if you move them in there, they've got to have some priority attached to them, and they're going to be thrown into a mix that have already been prioritized.
I think that parks and planning will get more funding than administration as a grouping.
I'm just asking what priority would you put on them, because she's going to need to know that before she can answer.
I'll defer to her. If it stays, that's fine. I just would rather get some more comment from her.
Okay, Councilmember, without objection, Councilmember Clark, do you have any opinion on that?
If we move it to public works, I would hope we would put it at the same level as.
We can't hear you. Can you turn your microphone on, please? Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. Thank you for mentioning that.
Sorry, I thought I had it on. Sorry about that. No, if we moved it to public works, I would want to keep it at the same level as, I mean, That's a tough one to just throw it in after they've been prioritized, but I would say like medium in the middle somewhere. But I don't have really a specific place I would put that.
Okay. Does anyone else want to speak in favor of moving those two items, items 12 and 13, into Public Works with a medium priority item? It ended up roughly somewhere in the middle of the list for you to see at the next meeting. Does anyone else want to speak in favor?
I got a comment on that. I can comment on that.
Okay, hold on. Just a second, Joe. We got Councilmember Flasher. Are you speaking to that? I have your hand next. Okay, so we're going to hold for a moment. Okay, you're next, Councilmember Garetano.
Okay, and by the way, I do have another comment on maybe one we missed before, so don't, remove me from the list. But 12 and 13, I think we have a common theme here, which is enhancing accessibility, and I'm wondering if that's the right way for Councilmember Clark to kind of look at it and say that maybe it's a goal for us as a city that we look at all kinds of opportunities, and not necessarily be it parks or trails, but when there are opportunities that we can enhance, and again, I don't know if that's the right term, accessibility, but I seem to think that maybe that's
keeping it where it is or moving it into public.
I'm speaking then for keeping it and combining the two to say, accessibility enhancements, unless there's a better term that Councilmember Clark. But I think that way we have a goal there for us to work on.
Okay, thank you. So let's just take these one at a time and close the loops and get down the list here. So does anyone else want to speak in favor of moving these two items to Public Works? And then we're going to talk about as a medium goal, like sort of in the middle, and either way, where they're going to come back to Councilmember Garetano's suggestion. So does anyone else want to speak in favor of doing it? Hearing none, that will not occur. So is there any objection on your part to having these two folded under Councilmember Clark, since these are yours, under enhanced accessibility as the sub goal with these two underneath it? Do you have an issue with that?
Well, I have a question because I was thinking that Councilmember McCune was saying number 12. If we move number 12 to Parks and Trail, I can see that, but the interpreter, I don't see that should be moved to Parks, to Public Works.
Does anyone want to speak in favor of moving 12 to item 12 to Public Works? No. So, all right. So now are you okay with enhanced accessibility being the sub goal that we put these two under with the same priority within administration? Are you okay with that?
I am okay with that because I think that's going to move up as we go along in the years.
I'm sorry?
I think that those are going to become more important.
Okay. So does anyone else object to having that topic enhanced accessibility as the lead-in for these two goals underneath it? All right, seeing none, that's done. Now we're moving Councilmember Flasher.
Yeah. As the co-chair of the Community Outreach Task Force, I don't know what the goal of enhance the Community Outreach Task Force is. And so I'm wondering whoever put that on there, if they could explain that a little bit.
And I guess I would suggest along those lines, we just formed that. So I don't know how we could, at this point, be concerned that we need to enhance it. I don't know who suggested that, but unless there's a good reason to your point, Councilor Flasher, to having it at this juncture, it's already a standing committee. I would suggest we delete that. But
that is my point too, unless someone had a reason for adding that on there.
Does anyone want to speak to that?
Yeah, I added it, Dan. You don't have any money to your committee. You have $0. So I thought that this would be helpful to integrate so that you would have some budget moving forward. But if you don't think it's necessary, then let's remove it.
Yeah, I think based off of what we decided at our last meeting, that I don't think that there is any financial need at this point at all.
Fair enough.
Okay, so is there any objection to removing item 11? Seeing no objection, it's removed. Councilmember Garetano, on your other item.
Yeah, this might be a quick one. When we combined portfolio management, I recall hearing combining 3, 7, and 9, but I wasn't sure if 5 was mentioned. I would include 5 if it wasn't mentioned.
We actually mentioned 3, 5, 7, and 9.
Oh, okay. Then that's it. Thank you.
You're right. It is quick. Okay, especially since we've already done it, right? Councilmember Dodwell.
You're muted, Katie.
Thank you for letting me know I'm muted. Too many buttons to push. I'm done. We hit it.
Okay, thank you. So with these changes that we've made, which is to keep the priority as is, and we really, the only thing that's changed is to add 2 subtopics, intergovernmental relations, which 3, 5, 7, and 9 are folded into with the same prioritization as you see before you this evening, and 12 and 13 are folded into with the same prioritization under enhanced accessibility. With that, okay, and then portfolio management and what was going to be folded into, oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Portfolio management was 3, 5, 7, and 9. We have the financial, I'm sorry, enhanced accessibility, which is 12 and 13. And we have a third one, intergovernmental relations, which will replace, if I understood correctly, items 8 and 6. All right, with that, does anyone have any further changes to administration? If not, we're moving to the next because it's done. Okay, so at this point, let's see, we got tell you what, how about we do this if there's no objection? We've made some good progress once again, and we have another item that I don't want to lose attention to, but hopefully will not take a lot of discussion since we've already had significant discussion about it. So if there's no objection, let's go to the next item on our admin PW agenda, which is the consideration of expanding resolution 2021-5. And if that gets done as I think it may, let's then come back to our strategic planning and hopefully we can get that done. Councilor Edens, did I see your hand?
You did, but I was just going to offer to combine a couple of things on economic development and say what we've already passed and worked on. Just it'll make it easier.
Hold that thought, and we'll welcome that. We'll welcome that here in just a minute, hopefully. Okay, so is there any objection to moving to the second item of our work session so we can hash that? Okay, and again, council members, we've had a lot of discussion on this previously, so this issue is just, I'm just going to tee this out for everyone, is whether, it's not to do what we've already done. We've passed the resolution. This is whether we want to expand it, and I believe the proponent of this was Councilmember Rambo, and perhaps one other. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Rob, to quickly explain what you're looking for the council to do, and then we'll see if we can get a motion.
Sure. I just think in the interest of simple fairness, we should include B&B Theater, which I personally love and I think enhances our town center as much as any other business, and the Pond Athletic, just because we support them in many other ways, and they deserve both of those businesses deserve a break on their liquor license. That's it.
So you're limiting it to those two ones?
Well, I think so. I looked through the list in some detail, and I'd be happy to see others included in the interest of fairness. But the two that jumped out at me were those, because the others were point of sale, like packaged liquor and those kinds of things, like Gearbergs and Schnucks, et cetera.
So just to make sure, City Administrator Cross, those do have licenses, correct? Okay. So you want to make that motion?
Yes, I do. But Administrator Cross, can you verify that those are the only two additional businesses on your list that don't have that aren't just packaged liquor sales? I just want to make sure we're not missing anybody and we have to do this same exercise again. I apologize for that. But yes, I would like to make that motion, however you want to phrase it. If you can help me with that phrasing.
Okay. So that's the motion. Is there a second to the motion? Councilor Remedy, are you seconding?
I was just going to add Wildwood Hotel.
Ooh.
Okay. Wildwood Hotel.
If that's okay with Councilmember Rambo.
Absolutely is. I just missed that, or just didn't think of it. But yeah, that's appropriate.
We have a second from Councilmember Flasher. Councilmember McCune.
So help me recall, was Milk and Honey in there because they sold wine?
They're already on the list.
I think they're on.
They were. I like this initiative, and like I said before, it's very hard to just give the exception to people that sold liquor. I think that we need to look at this in a broader way for other businesses that also struggled. So while I appreciate the support, I'm not going to be able to support moving forward with the resolution, unfortunately, until we look at other businesses that don't sell liquor that suffered.
Okay, so you're speaking against. Councilmember Bartoni.
Thank you. I was going to point out the Wildwood Hotel, but somebody beat me to that. But the other one on here that I do not believe sells packaged liquor would be St. Albans Row.
What is their fee?
Well, it's only $52.50.
No,
I'm
what
just
is
saying.
the fee? What's the fee for?
Oh, that I wouldn't know. They're just on the list.
Okay. I have to say, and I'm not speaking for or against this, but I don't think this is something that we want to do without having a thorough understanding of who is and is not on this list. Because if we do that at this point, we run the risk of having to come back to it again at another meeting and do it a third time. So I would ask our city administrator, and I don't know if we can even do this at this point tonight, but if there's no objection, I would ask that we postpone this. As much as I hate taking an idea, again, not speaking in favor or against it, but I think we need to have a cogent, thorough understanding of who is and is not eligible for this. And I'm kind of seeing we don't have that at the moment. I mean, these are potentially great ideas, but again, we run the risk of coming back to it. So I guess City Administrator Cross, is this something you can do like in the next few minutes, or is this something that needs to come back once you can do it?
Why don't we continue on? Let me find that list. I can tell who's not.
Okay, so we're going to go back into, so he says, if you didn't hear him, he says he thinks he may be able to do it. So if there's no objection, let's just have that motion held in abeyance for a few more minutes. See what he can do, and then let's go back into strategic planning. Councilmember Golani.
Yeah, I was just going to make a mention to Councilmember Rambo's point of in regards to this extension of this. That was our original intent, was to cover all of these folks that are being asked to be covered today. So I never provided a specific list to the city. I think we just went by what talking about bars and restaurants, but it was intended to be anyone with a liquor license that was able to serve liquor in any capacity to consumers. So
thank you. And my apology, I called on you out of order because we had, my apology to Councilmember Edens and Bertolino, you were on the list first. I neglected to see your hand. Councilmember Edens.
I was going to make a motion to postpone only, but we figured that out. We'll come back to it. I was just going to say, it's when we voted before, we had the numbers with the fiscal impact in front of us. I'd like to see it. So if Steve could not only tell us, but if he could type that out and then do a share screen, that would really help me absorb the information.
Right. Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list that was sent out with the agenda, and all those we've mentioned, St. Albans Row, Milk and Honey, so they're on the list here. Two questions. One is, why is Casey's Bar on there twice? And the other issue is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, City Administrator Cross, but these establishments pay not only their liquor fee, but they also pay their business license. And if you're non-selling of, you do not sell liquor, you also have a business license. So these folks are actually paying, in addition to their normal business license, they're paying for their liquor license. So I don't see any reason to postpone or say, we're not fair to the other businesses. I think we are being, because this is an extraordinary fee that the others don't pay.
Mayor, point of clarification.
Sure, go ahead.
Our city clerk has been mentioning in the chat that she's got all these numbers for the city administrator.
Okay, well, then we have a left hand, right hand. So I just think we need to get the two of them together, do whatever they do, but I just want to make sure the council has the full list. And Are you ready,
No,
Council?
I've just been trying to find that.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that the council has the full list and the full financial implications. And if we can get that to you in some tangible form, shared screen or whatever we do, that would be ideal so that there's no misunderstanding. Councilor McKeon.
So Councilmember Galani said it was supposed to encompass all. Are you still including or not including Schnucks and Deerbergs? Because they do have a liquor license. So are you saying everybody but, or how does that work?
No, we didn't mean to include Schnucks and Deerbergs. It was specifically meant for a bar
Small
or restaurant
business.
environment that was able to serve
I think
Point
the-
of order.
liquor across.
Just a moment. I think the intent was, and I say this with all due respect to businesses that are not, that don't meet the scope, but my understanding was the scope were businesses that were basically based in the city of Wildwood, but that could be.
Yeah. Point of order, the motion just included adding, I believe it was 3 specific places. So the motion would have to be redone. That's on the floor. If
That's correct, it would.
people wanted to add to it, which I would not support. Walgreens and.
That is correct. Okay, so councilors, let's let our city administrator get this information before we speculate and so forth, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, if we can do that tonight. Is everyone okay with Councilor Bertolino?
Looking at the liquor license collection 2020 list sent out with the agenda, and it has Schnucks Markets on there, it has Deerbergs, it has B&B Theaters. What are we arguing about?
Relative to, what is that, Dave? What are you?
Well, I'm looking at this and this whole list, we're talking about, is the list complete? And everything that people have mentioned is on this liquor license list. Say that 3 times, liquor license list.
Okay, so you're saying we have the information to know the businesses. And
That's my opinion, and Steve Cross
Okay.
corrected me if I'm wrong.
We
Okay.
sent it out with the agenda, that I'm trying to find.
Steve hasn't for some reason been able to find that list.
I saw that, but that's not the full.
Yeah, there's just, Dave, there's confusion here among our city administrator and our city clerk as to whether that list is fully accurate and that sort of thing. So if we can just wait a few minutes until we get clarification on that, as much as I hate to do that. So we just need to do it. Okay, all right. Okay, moving back into strategic planning, we're going to have that motion. It's in abeyance. We'll handle that in just a second. Economic development is next. Is there anything that anyone wants to modify? First question, relative to the priority of any of these items, or do you have any suggested subcategories that might lend clarification to this? Councilmember Edens.
I do. I'm just going to go down the list. So the first thing on number 5, it says.
You do what? You want to choose priority, or you have a subtopic?
So I have both. I have a subtopic, but first I think there needs to be a correction to the wording of number 5 based on intent.
Okay.
It says acquisition of businesses in town center. I don't think acquisition is the right word. It sounds like we're buying private businesses. I believe that the intent when it was added was an increase in what is the word I'm looking for?
I think the word would be add new businesses in town center.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, so if there's no objection, that's what we're going to change that to be. Is there any objection to line 5 being add new businesses in town center? All right, that's what it is. Next, Councilmember Edens.
All right. Yep. So number 13 can be combined with number 9 and 8 because 8 and 9 do have an education component. Now, number 11 does as
Hold on. 13 with what again?
I would combine number 13 and number 9 and 8 into like a public outreach category because they overlap. Now, part of 11 does make sense in that category. However, you are pitching number 11 to the private sector and not what you would call the traditional public, which is why.
Yep. Is there any objection to folding 8, 9, and 13 into public? What do you want to call it? Public education?
Well, just public. I would say outreach.
Public. Okay. public outreach. And that would have a priority of 8. We would keep the top priority. So 8, 13, and 8, 9, and 13. Is there any objection to folding all 3 of those into a new item called public outreach?
And then the other
Hold
thing,
on,
oh, I'm sorry.
that's right. Okay, seeing none, that's what we're doing. So public outreach is now line 8, and line 9 is gone, and line 13 is gone. Go ahead, Councilmember Eden.
And I just wanted to let you all know that even though some things are included on the list, they're already being done. So we're just going through our final approval of word and website location for number 8. We've already done a good bit of work on number 10. So just because certain things are farther down the list doesn't mean they haven't been started. So that's more of a general statement.
So what are we gonna do?
And also, do you want to combine number 5, which when we changed the town center, do you want to combine that with number 2?
Yes. Also, we've got some background noise coming from someone with little kids.
So do we want to combine? Yeah, whoever has the background noise, if you can manage that a little bit. So Councilor Edens has suggested combining 2, which is attract new retail space, and 5, did you say, Councilor Edens?
Yeah, because 5 is specific to town center, but 2 is specific to the city. So if we want to have 2 and then a sub goal of 5, or just call it the same goal, I'm fine either way. But
well, office users aren't necessarily new businesses. So if we did that, I mean, and I think it would be good to combine those. That's my personal opinion, but I think it would be attract new businesses and customers or something of that nature.
you could even add the word retention, but yeah.
Attract and retain
Attract
new
and retain,
businesses.
yeah. So we're essentially lowering the vacancy rate as well, because 1, we've got places that are open that need to be rented, and 2, new things that can be built. So it's a combination of adding.
Can we say that include retail and office? Because I think one of the things that we're missing right now is we don't have enough office workers to support our town center activities. And so I want to make sure that we include retail, but I really want us to start focusing on office workers.
So without objection, it would say attract and retain new retail and office businesses.
Yep.
Councilor Dodwell?
That's fine.
Okay, and that'll become what is now line 2, and line 5 is deleted. Is there any objection to that on the part of anyone on the council? All right, anything further, Councilmember Edens?
No, sir, just that a couple things.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything under economic development that they would like to move? I guess one thing.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I'm just going to mention one thing that I see. I would suggest we have a subcategory of, I guess I'd say promote related events, and by related, I mean related to economic development, related events, and I would put 16 and 17 in there. And
We just call those economic development events.
Economic development events, that's fine. Councilmember Edens is chair of that committee. Do you have any objection to that?
Nope, absolutely.
Okay, so does any member of the council have an objection to that being the subcategory and those last 2 being included with the same prioritization? Okay. I'm sorry. I defer to others on that. I looked at 11, adding that one in there, but that's not really an event. That's actually going out and marketing at trade shows and so forth. That's not a Wildwood event.
That's Julian doing his job.
Yeah.
I would also, Mr. Mayor, just a clarification, when we combine that, it does include continuation of events that already exist, correct?
And Councilmember Rambo suggested, and I would agree, that we fold 6 into that as well.
Yep, I would do that.
Okay. Any objection, Lady Mayor of the Council? Okay, that's what we're doing. Councilmember Remy, thank you for being patient.
No problem. And I appreciate it. I was going to say some of the things we talked about. So the one thing I would say is, just in interest of just simplifying, I think that number one and number 4 probably aren't needed, and I would recommend deletion because I think that we've already addressed them in other areas.
I would agree. Is there any objection to deleting 1 and 4?
I do object to let's defer to Julian on this because they're part of our specific work program that committee approves.
Defer to who again?
Maybe I would defer to Julian on this because our committee has already approved certain things as part of the work program that we review annually.
Well, let's take these one at a time. What about removing high-speed internet, since that's already?
We just added it. So I would say no, only from the economic,
That's okay. All right. So we have a suggestion to remove it. Does anyone else want to support that suggestion? If not, it'll stay where it is. So we have a support of removal. All in favor of removal of item 1, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
We have 1 opposed.
Opposed.
Councilmember Eden's opposed. Who else is opposed? Councilmember Dodwell's opposed. Anyone else opposed?
Councilmember Jaxie.
Councilmember who, I'm sorry?
Jaxie.
Jaxie, okay. We have 3 opposed. Any other opposed?
Joe Garitano.
And Joe Garitano opposed. Any other opposed? A motion, or the vote carries. Then the other one was, which one did you suggest to remove?
Number 4.
Number 4, continue to implement the city strategic planning documents. And Councilor Edens is chair of that. Do you have an opinion on that one? Do you want to keep that or no?
Julian, do you have a comment on this?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, that was really added as part of our annual work program, just to implement the master plan, the economic development guide, the council's goals and objectives, to kind of oversee all implementation efforts.
Well, that's what we're going to be doing with this, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay. So, Councilor Edens, are you sure you want to keep that?
Yep, take it out.
Okay. Is there any objection to removing item 4? So it's gone. Okay. I think we have we have the new public outreach category. We have the new attract and retain new and retail office businesses. We're removing items 1 and 4, and I think that's it. Is there anyone who objects to the prioritization with those changes for economic development as part of our strategic plan? Councilor McCune.
Lauren, you brought up a good point about the 2 things that are in progress now, the Visit Wildwood, and I think number 9. Do you want to move that up to the top of the list so it just gets completed?
I don't believe we have to because they, for the tourism will be coming back to the next campaign. So we could make an editorial change and take out develop anew and just use the word complete.
Okay. We've just done a lot of work and I want to make sure if that lines up with you.
I'm really grateful for that. The same thing really with the veterans programming. We've done programming and information as a page, but we haven't expanded it into an event if we would ever choose to. So I would just change develop new to continue as well. But I'm just for a point of clarification for me, does removing the support of extension of high-speed internet affect what the committee already approved for our work program? Or is this just, we're just saying it's not part of a council goal?
It's just not part of this particular, it's part of the city's goal, but it's not part of this particular economic development package of goals.
So, but it doesn't,
that doesn't mean you will benefit from it because it's elsewhere.
But does it change our work program?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think that ship may have sailed because they voted to change it. So that, unless you want to make a reconsideration of it, I think that's done.
Okay, well, the reason why we added it and talked about it was the Rural Internet Access Committee does the work, but we could provide information and support, reasons why it's helpful to local businesses, why we need it for workforce development. And we've already added
So
to what.
you want to make a motion to reconsider?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay, so you have a motion to reconsider to add that back in, correct?
Yep. It
Okay.
doesn't need to be number one. I'm surprised, so many people voted for it and then want to eliminate it.
Okay, is there a second to the motion to reconsider?
I'd move it to the bottom of the list, but I'd keep it.
So you have a second to the motion to reconsider, which is by Councilmember McCune. This will take, let's see.
With moving it
This
to
will
the
take a
end.
majority vote to reconsider. So all those in favor of reconsideration, please say aye.
Can we get a comment on this before we vote?
Councilor Garetano, what?
I thought, we have a motion to reconsider. Can I just make a statement on that? Or does,
Let's see if it's debatable. Yes, it is debatable. Go ahead.
yeah, the reason I am supporting this is because our focus when we talk about internet access has always been around homes, families, residents, but there is a population that needs to hear from the city, and the city needs to make a statement that these independent business owners that want to run and operate their businesses in areas right now that do not have internet need to hear that there's this effort there coming from the economic development side of it, because it is just as important. So that's the reason I'm supporting it.
You're supporting reconsideration?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of reconsideration, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Garetano. Councilmember Garetano.
Oh, sorry. Yes, for reconsideration. Thank you.
Councilmember Flasher.
Opposed to reconsideration.
Councilmember Jaxie.
Yes, for reconsideration.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Yes.
Councilmember Gross.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Remy.
No.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Councilmember McCune.
Yes.
Councilmember Rainbow.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
No.
Okay. So given the vote, just to expedite the business of the council, I'm assuming that by consensus, since there was a majority for reconsideration, there is a majority to have that added back to its current position of one. If we want to have a vote on that, we can, but I think that's going to be the outcome of it. So does anyone want to have a vote on that, or is everyone good with that being the case?
With your permission, Mr. Mayor, would it help the council if we change the word support to help market? It moved it from number one to the bottom of the list. And the reason I say this is because it's economic development that offered the business that was willing to host individuals that didn't have internet at home as a workplace in the city newsletter.
Okay, so the suggestion by Councilor Edens is to change it to market the extension of high-speed internet and move it to what would become 17. Does anyone else want to speak in support of
Would
that?
second that. I was going to speak to the fact that we need to reword this. This is how economic development gets the message out to our business community.
So Councilor Dodd, are you speaking in support of changing that wording and moving it?
Yes, I am. I'm seconding the request.
All right. Councilor Rambo speaking in support of that?
Yes, just actually a point of clarification. This does not in any way alter the priority one status of high-speed internet. This is just more or less housekeeping.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It is. Okay. So we're already past 7 and we need to handle the other issues. So without objection, that's what we're going to do per Councilmember Eden's suggestion. Item 1 will be support the extension, market or promote, I would argue, promote the extension of high-speed internet to the city's rural areas, and it's going to become priority 17. Okay, with that, is there any further comment or change suggested to anything about economic development? Subject to you getting the revised list. Okay, it is gone and done. And let's see, I'll tell you what, while we're at it, Lake Chesterfield, this ought to be an easy one. Is there anything further anyone wants to add? I defer to the 2 council members relative to Lake Chesterfield. Okay.
I can just speak on it. I think that that's still in development.
Do you have anything you want to add to this list?
As a sub goal underneath that, is that what you're referring? I think it covers everything.
Okay. All right, so we have really one topic left, but we need to go, we got to get to our main meeting, and we do have the list now. So let's go back to the motion that's on the floor. City Administrator Cross, do you have a list of those that would be within the scope of the motion that has been made this evening?
Yes, sir. Hopefully Julian unmuted me. Yep, he did. I apologize, Council. We had a couple different schedules going and I couldn't quite put my hand on it. But thank you to City Clerk Megan, who did send me the right one. So, and I think this was included in the package. The ones that are not included in the roughly $19,000 that we talked about, that would be the refund of 2020, as well as the waiving of the 2021 liquor license fees, excuse me, fees. The ones that were not included in those numbers: Frontier Petroleum, Western Oil, St. Alban Row Catholic Church, Deerberg's Town Center, Mobile Oil on the Run, Walgreens, Wildwood Hotel, Schnucks Markets, B&B Theaters, Pond Athletic, and lastly, Cell Enterprise, Wild Horse Creek, BP. The question was also raised about why was Casey's Bar on here twice. You'll notice that the sum of those two is the $750. It was just broken down between two different kind of licenses, but it's the same amount as everybody else, which is $750 per year.
Okay.
So that's just why it's there. So those are the ones that are not included in the current resolution.
Okay, so the motion was on the floor, as I understood it, was to expand the resolution that was previously adopted by the council to include the following: Casey's Bar, St. Albans Row, Wildwood Hotel, B&B Theater, and the Pond Athletic Association. Before I get to my next question, which is whether we want to include any of these others, is everyone in agreement that those are the individual businesses included within the scope of the motion as it stands now? Councilmember Kuhn.
On the Run is in Ward 7, even though I'm not in favor of this liquor licensing.
We're not to that yet.
Well, I'm talking about on the Run of including.
We're not to that yet. I just want to know if everyone is in agreement whether these 5 businesses that I just mentioned are within the scope of the motion and only those. We're going to come to all these.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So is there anyone disagree that those are the 5 businesses? Casey's Bar, St. Albans.
Mayor, it's 4. Mayor, it's 4. It's 4 items. There's no Casey. Casey's already on there. It's Pond, St. Albans, Wildwood Hotel, and B&B.
And Pond Athletic.
And Pond Athletic, yes.
Okay, thank you. So the business, there are 4 now that are within, my apology, within the scope of the motion that's on the floor: St. Albans Row, Wildwood Hotel, B&B Theater, Pond Athletic Association. Everyone in agreement with that? Okay, now to the others that were not. I'm going to go down this. If anyone wants to make a motion to add any of these, and we'll take them one by one. Councilor McCune, well, we'll leave you. All right. Wildwood BP. Does anyone want to make a motion to add Wildwood BP? Schnucks. Walgreens. Deerberg's. Mobile Oil.
Yes, Mobile Oil.
You're making a motion to add it?
The on the Run, yes, in Ward 7.
You want to add it to the list?
Yes.
Okay. We'll come to that in a moment. Western Oil. Frontier Petroleum. Okay, so we have, out of all those, and Councilmember Bartoni and Garitano, I have you, just bear with me one moment here. So we have a motion to add, it's an amendment to the main motion, Mobile Oil. Is there a second to that amendment to the main motion? If not, we move forward.
I explained the
Not
motion.
until we have a second. We have to have a second before we debate. Is there a second to the motion? Seeing no second, it's gone. Thank you for your patience, Councilmember Bartoni.
That's okay. I was actually, I mean, the kind of the difference between the ones that are kind of on this list that are not is the difference between pouring a drink and packaged liquor. And as much as I kind of would like Councilmember McCune's motion, because I think everybody here probably knows that I work for the company that owns Mobile on the Run, but packaged liquor sales in 2020 were at record levels for anybody selling packaged liquors. So they kind of got a benefit out of this that the other businesses on here suffered from. So I also like what Councilmember Bertolino said earlier. They have liquor license and business license. The business license everybody's paying for. It's just this one small group that is suffered from the pandemic. People aren't, all of us included, weren't able to go and patronize those businesses.
So on the main motion, in support or against, Councilmember Garitano?
My question is just a procedural question. I can come back to it if you want to get through the motion.
No, go ahead. That actually would take priority. What's your procedural question?
So my question is, the resolution was passed at the last council meeting. So will there be a new resolution, or does the resolution need to be reconsidered then from the last meeting?
City Attorney Young.
Based upon the action tonight, this would be a new resolution amending the prior resolution.
Okay, so it will need to come back to council at the next meeting then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bertolino?
Yeah, I'm a little confused, Mr. Mayor, but do you need a motion to approve the entire list?
No, just the four that we have, the motion that's on the floor, which is St. Albans Row, the Wildwood Hotel, B&B Theater, and Pond Athletic Association. So if this motion passes, the resolution will be before the council at its next meeting to formally add those.
I would move that we include those in my rationale.
We already have that motion on the floor, so you're just speaking.
Sorry, I
in
thought we
support of
just
it.
moved that down. Okay.
It's all right. Okay, all those in favor of having the resolution prepared to include these, it will be on the agenda of the next council meeting. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Opposed. Opposed.
One opposed, Councilmember McCune. Any other opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, so I would suggest we can adjourn the meeting, but the work session, I would suggest, since we've made progress and we I think we'll have a relatively light agenda, and we only have, for the main meeting, we only have one category left on our strategic planning, that we recess this the work session. We can always adjourn it if we need to do that. Is there any objection to recessing temporarily this work session, and then we'll go into our main meeting? And is everyone okay proceeding right now with the main meeting? All right.
Can we take a 2-minute break? Can we take a 2-minute break?
We'll take a 2 to 3 minute break, no longer than that. We got a lot to do. We're already, we got public probably watching. It's already 12 after. So take a couple of minutes and we'll be back for the meeting. All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the meeting of the City Council for the City of Wildwood for Monday, February 22, 2021. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Boland.
Here.
Councilmember Garitano.
Present.
Councilmember Flasher.
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember Nyan.
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Here.
Councilmember Bros.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Remy. Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Galani.
Here.
Councilmember McCune.
Here.
Councilmember Rambo.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
All right, thank you, and welcome again to everyone. For those of you who are comfortably able, if you would please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And next, we have approval of minutes from the February 8, 2021 work session and regular meeting. If there are no comments on the minutes, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Made by Councilmember Flasher, seconded by Councilmember Galani. Any discussion on the motion? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving next to public participation. I know we have at least a couple individuals here in the council chambers. I'll just mention a few things about that before we begin. Anyone who wishes to speak must complete a speaker card and provide it to the city clerk, who is seated to your left of the podium. When your name is called, please approach the podium and state your name and ward. To ensure that all who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so, there is a 5-minute time limitation, and I will let you know when the time limit is reached. If you have any questions for us, please mention that during your remarks and identify the official that you would like to respond. That official will make note of it, and at the conclusion of public participation, any official who chooses to respond will have 3 minutes to do so as to all questions directed to that official. The official may choose to respond to your questions after tonight's meeting, and we may also post any responses on the City Council page of our website. And finally, please be respectful to others in making your remarks. This means that interrupting others and using profane and abusive language are prohibited, and I want to thank you in advance for following these. First speaker card, please.
First speaker card is Ezra and Ryan Leslie wishing to comment about internet access.
Hello, I am Ezra Leslie. I'm a freshman at Lafayette High School, and today I'm going to be talking about how unacceptably terrible the internet is in some parts of Wildwood. How I and countless other students struggle with virtual learning because of our internet. Why Whisper and personal hotspots are not the correct answer, and how fiber internet, although expensive, is objectively the correct answer. Fiber internet, unlike the DSL of the 1990s, uses pulses of infrared light through a fiber cable to transfer data at speeds unseen before. Fiber can achieve speeds up to a whopping gigabit per second on both download and upload speeds. Compare this to the current internet servicing many Wildwood residents at 6 megabits down, 160 times slower than fiber, and 1 megabit up, 1,000 times slower than fiber. That means, in theory, applications should download 160 times faster than before, and you should be able to upload large videos in seconds and load web pages in milliseconds. Fiber sounds great on paper, but how does it perform in real life? Let's take a real world application to discover this. Virtual schooling is something that plagues students with bad internet all of the time, especially with the rise of the COVID-19 pandemic. Virtual schooling, which is heavily based on video communication software like Zoom, differs greatly on how good your internet is. If you have bad internet, say a DSL connection from like 30 years ago, you can never turn on your video. Your teachers and classmates often can't hear you, and or you can't hear them. And most of all, you're trying to have a Zoom running while you might be trying to write on a Google document, or you might still be loading an assignment. Virtual schooling is a disaster for students with bad internet. And getting better internet is the only way to fix it. Another solution proposed to the council is for problems with work and school is to give struggling people personal hotspots. This is often less expensive than simply fixing the internet. However, there are some problems with this solution. One problem is the lack of service that comes with some personal hotspots. For instance, at my house, I get 1 bar of AT&T service and no Verizon service. Even if you are in an area with good service, in which case it's unlikely you have bad internet, hotspots might seem faster at first, but they are often not reliable and or spike uncontrolled. Whisper internet seems to be a very popular choice in council currently. I respectfully don't see the appeal in that option. Whisper is a wireless internet provider. Wireless internet has been historically found to be less reliable than wired connections. Whisper is also not very fast. While Whisper offers up to 25 megabits per second, which is like 4 times as fast as Lakewood Citizens' current internet, it's not by any means fast. And combined with lack of reliability, Whisper and other wireless routes are not the correct answer. Don't spend money on something that is marginally better and already antiquated. Starlink is also an opportunity for people in needs of internet. I'm thrilled for Starlink, if nothing else comes. Starlink sounds amazing. However, Starlink is in beta, early beta, and it is not an alternative for fiber internet. It's slower in terms of all 3, download speed, upload speed, and latency, and is probably, based on concept, less reliable. And while it might be cheaper for the city to transfer 100% of the cost of this necessary infrastructure to citizens, it is not certain that it will be available or viable in the near future. Combining speeds 10 to 160 times faster than speeds available to Wildwood citizens currently, with unprecedented reliability and low consumer cost, fiber is obviously the best option. Don't waste the city's money on outdated subpar technology. Having fiber internet will attract more businesses, citizens, and help this city grow. For instance, my neighbor has been trying to sell their beautiful home for over a year now, and no people have taken the offer because, in the mind of the realtor, it's because our internet is so astoundingly terrible. The fact that a 14-year-old is coming to talk in a council meeting should show the dire situations that internet puts forward. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you act on the fiber proposals, and soon. My community and my peers fall further behind the technology curve every day.
Thank you. Next speaker, Carly, or do we have another speaker?
I just have 2 minutes to add something.
Go ahead.
I know most of you've seen.
You're a separate speaker, so that's fine. Yep, go ahead.
We'll be very quick. Thank you for listening to, thank you for listening to Ezra. This is my son. That was not as emotional as some of the conversations we've had around the dinner table at my house over the last 6 years. So when Ezra and I would have, I hope not to embarrass you, But when we would have heated emotional conversations about how do I fix this problem, my answer to him was, well, do the same thing that I'm doing. As a responsible citizen, you need to tell your representatives what you need and what makes things better for you. So I've been attending rural internet access committee meetings since I got here. And the first thing I'll say is thank you so much for removing that word rural, because this isn't a Ward 1 or a Ward 6 problem. This is a Wildwood problem. And it's only going to get better if the city acts in the interest of all of its citizens, not just those in the rural parts. Mayor, thank you. I've told you this before personally, but thank you for your efforts to provide something for a Band-Aid for us during the time of COVID. It absolutely taxed the failing infrastructure to the point where he couldn't attend school, I couldn't work. I've driven to town center to try to upload documents before because it takes hours to upload a spreadsheet. I can't work like that. Can't preserve my job like that. Some of the comments that we had were, how come we can't just have normal internet? Why do we have to live here? I'd rather have a smaller house and share a bedroom if I was able to stream a show that I wanted to watch. My teacher wants everybody to have their camera on during class, but I can't. Zoom crashes when I try and I miss the instructions. She calls on me and thinks I'm not paying any attention. Can you sue the people that sold us this house for saying it had high-speed internet when it clearly does not? Can you sue Whisper? They said we were in a covered area before we bought the house, and we're not 6 years later. Why do we have to live here anyway? I hate this place. Why can't we just move to a different city that understands that internet is a necessity? I've had some of those same thoughts over the last 6 years. I'm very proud of Ezra for making his statement this evening to you, and I'm thankful for you listening to him. I'll conclude with this. I'm really grateful for the understanding of the need. I've seen evidence of that in work sessions and in council meetings, and I'm more encouraged now than I have been in the past. I thank you. I hope that this is the culmination of 15 years of a rural internet access committee, and it will culminate in action, not just activity. I will ask a question of you if I can, for anyone that would like to answer. I understand that there were prioritized proposals that were submitted by month end for review. Will those proposals be shared with the public, and is there a timeline to select a winning proposal? Thank you again for giving us some time to speak with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have any other speaker cards? So I'll take the, hold on just a moment here. I'll take the liberty of answering your question, Mr. Leslie, and thank you again for being here. We are on the cusp of getting those, or that process for the responses finalized, and there will certainly be public input relative to what we do with respect to this issue going forward. So, all right, thank you. Any other speaker cards? All right, Councilmember Remy.
Since he asked a question, I guess we can answer too. So I would just say one thing. I think that Ezra, maturity in coming here tonight is respected, and his father as well. And I would just throw out to that committee that I think having a school child,
Councilman Marie, I'm sorry, just point, this is a time, we can't dialogue at this point. This is, if you want to answer their question, that's what we can do here, but we can't go beyond that at this point. So
fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. No, and I know your cause is noble there, and I appreciate that. Okay, and I don't see anyone else wishing to speak, so I'm sorry. Yeah, I've already looked, and I didn't see any that wanted to do that. Thank you. Okay, moving into mayor announcements, I just want to mention something that I put in my mayor's report, and hopefully on Friday that I do every Friday. We have a little bit different of an agenda this evening, and I did this based on the fact that other municipalities have done it, and they do it with success, and I thought that it might further the council's consideration of issues. And so thought, we're going to give it a try. So near the end of the agenda, we have what's called a consent agenda. You may have heard that term before. And basically, this, first of all, it does not apply to bills, because they need to be, each one of those need to be debated and voted upon by law. But it can apply to things like resolutions, approval of expenditures. It might, at some point, if we and I'll talk to admin PW about rearranging the agenda to accommodate this. It could even apply to approval of minutes. It's basically for things that it is unlikely, as we're putting the agenda together, that there's going to be any objection to. So it's a unanimous consent concept, and that there would be no council member who would want to speak or debate any of those items. Now, if any member of the council, when we have these, and we develop the agenda and I put these items on the consent agenda, if any member of the council wants to remove something from the consent agenda for debate, you have that right. And if you want to do that, that's what we'll do. If no one wants to do that, then we'll take the consent agenda as presented, and it'll take one vote of the council to approve all the items that are in the consent agenda on the main meeting agenda. Is there any question on that? Because I know this is a little bit new. Councilmember McCune.
So as an example, I have questions on the expenditures. So I would object to number 3. Is that how this works? I segment out number 3.
If you want to ask questions about expenditures, you just need to let me know you want that removed, and we'll make that a separate item. Is that what you're wanting to do?
Please.
Okay, so we're going to take the expenditures off the consent agenda. All right, anything further? Councilmember Clark.
If there's something that we see that we need to add in to.
If you want to add something, that's a great question. If you want to add something to the consent agenda, the time to do that would be when the city clerk, prior to publishing that agenda, like on Wednesday typically, sends the agenda around for everyone to look at and add to and comment or whatever, make suggestions. And so the way to do it procedurally would be to ask Megan or me. She'll eventually ask me, since I put the agenda together, hey, Councilmember Clark thinks something should be on the consent agenda. What do you think about it? And I'll either do that or call you and talk about it or whatever. So if anyone wants to capture something into the consent agenda, you can certainly make that suggestion. I imagine when you get the agendas and you see the items there, I've probably already done that. So in my mind, when I'm putting it together, if there's even a hint of a likelihood of debate or division of the assembly in the vote, it's not going to be on there. And so it's purely for things that are typically ministerial. They're important, but they're ministerial. They don't have debate, and it'll expedite the meeting of the council. Okay, but thank you for that question. All right. Moving next into our second readings of legislation, Bill 2595 is before the council for final passage. It concerns wards 2, 3, 4, and 8. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Did I see Councilmember Edens, or did you raise your hand? Yes. Councilmember Edens. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2595.
Bill 2595, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement with Kelp Contracting Incorporated for the FY 2021 concrete street slab and sidewalk replacement project, including traffic control and other incidental items as shown on the project specifications and drawings. Second reading.
Thank you. Rick, do you have anything further you want to mention relative to Bill 2595?
I do not, Mr. Mayor. The bill is ready for final passage, but I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Rick or any comments on the bill? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2595.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxie,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano.
Aye.
Okay, the bill passes. and is now in effect. Bill 2596 is before the council for final passage, and it concerns Ward 5. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Bertolino, seconded by Councilmember McCutcheon. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2596.
Bill 2596, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement with Foster's Concrete Construction LLC for the Evergreen Forest Curb Replacement Project, including traffic control and other incidental items as shown on the project specifications and drawings. Second reading.
Okay, thank you. Rick, do you have anything further relative to Bill 2596?
I do not, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. But again, I'm available for any questions from the council.
All right. Any questions for Rick or any comments on the bill? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2596.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Eden,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Aye.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
The bill is passed. Last of our second readings, Bill 2597 is before the council and it concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Remy, seconded by Councilmember Clark. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2597.
Bill 2597, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an agreement with Natalie McAvoy as the farmer's market manager for the upcoming 2021 season. Second reading.
Okay, thank you. Joe, do you have anything you would like to mention relative to Bill 2597?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, but the Department of Planning and Parks is available for any questions or comments.
All right. Are there any questions for Joe or any comments on Bill 2597? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of the bill.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Aye.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Okay, Bill 2597 is passed. We have one first reading this evening, Bill 2599, and it concerns Ward 6. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Jaxi, Ward 6, seconded by Councilmember Rambo. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2599.
Bill 2599, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the consolidation of two existing lots of record, those properties being lots 1 and 2 of the Hawks Rest subdivision, Plat 6, which are located in sections 7 and 18, Township 44 North, Range 3 East, and more specifically situated on the south side of Hawks Trailer Road, west of Hawks Point Road, from now to be known as the Hawks Rest Plat 6 Consolidation Plat. First reading.
Thank you. Joe, anything you'd like to mention relative to Bill 2599?
With your permission, Mr. Mayor, The owner of the two lots would like to consolidate them into a 6-acre tract of land. The plat complies with all the requirements of the city subdivision and development regulations. And the property owner has been advised of certain concerns relating to Hawks Trail Drive by the overall Road Maintenance Association. And information has been provided to that owner regarding the contact. All told, the plat is ready for final approval in 2 weeks. And if there are any questions, the department would be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe relative to Bill 2599? All right, seeing none, that takes us to the consent agenda that I mentioned earlier. We have 2 resolutions that are there. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, made by Councilmember Edens, seconded by Councilmember Galani. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, Councilmember McCune.
When you said the
resolution, yours was the corporate expenditure. That's not a resolution, so it's not in.
just want to make sure.
All right,
Thank you.
All in favor of the motion to approve the Councilmember Clark?
I'm not clear yet how this is working. So if I have something about resolution 2021-6 that I would like a little bit of a change in the verbiage. Do I bring that up now?
From the consent agenda.
I do what?
We need to pull it from the consent agenda and vote on it separately. We can do that.
Okay, I do have something I'd like to add.
So we end up with, we're not going to have a consent agenda this evening. All right, so we're going to take these one at a time. Resolution 20-21-6 is before the council for passage. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2021-6? Made by Councilmember Edens. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Remy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Are you opposed? Okay, Councilmember Clark.
On page 2 of this policy, in the printout, on the first paragraph, after the points 2, 3, and 4, the harassment examples include those of verbal noises, jokes, impeding, blocking movements, drawings, etc., and sexual requests. So the deaf community, as well as other people with intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities, are most often mocked by gesturing and copying their sign communication for the deaf and their movements by disabled. This is very dishonorable and is absolutely a harassment. So I would ask that we add something about gesturing and mocking into this, as well as the verbal.
Okay. And to do that properly, I would recommend you make a motion to postpone the next meeting to give the city attorney time to do that. City attorney, do you have a different opinion on that? Or is it something, I mean, assuming it's something that can be done, if it's not, then that takes care of the issue. But if it is, I'm not sure you want to be crafting language in a policy document on the fly at the bench. But what are your thoughts?
No, Mr. Mayor, no, I would agree with that. However, I would say to Councilmember Clark that I believe that what you're referencing is included in the language that's in here. In particular, it is not meant to be an exhaustive list. It says including but not necessarily limited to. But the examples also include, I just had it here, visual insults, which also is, in other matters, visual displays, all of which I think would be included in the context of what you're referencing.
I wouldn't have thought that, but I can see where you get that. But the mocking, I think, is a little different than visual displays. I think of maybe posters or
I think the including is not limited to, it's not, you said it's not an exhaustive list.
It is not.
And I mean, frankly, you can't list everything, but I mean, I think we can you can make your motion, he can add it specifically, but I think he says you're good, I think you're good with that.
Okay, I just think that since we specifically mentioned some things, this is such a big thing right now and has been even in the news. I think if we specifically put that in, it would be helpful. So I would make a motion to add that.
So we have a motion to
Or to
postpone,
postpone.
to allow the city attorney to specifically put in the language relative to the hearing impaired and actions and gestures. Is that correct?
To deaf and hard of hearing, as well as intellectual and physical disabilities.
Is there a second to the motion to postpone for that purpose? Seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. Any debate on the motion to postpone? Councilmember Edens.
I completely support Councilmember Clark's additions. I interpret it as redundant, especially because isn't a disability considered a protected characteristic as well?
It is.
Okay, so I'm going to vote no only because I think it's already included, and I understand what you're saying, but I'm afraid if we enumerate too many things, it could be an issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, thank you, Tricia. I appreciate your including that. I have an autistic grandson who's 13 years old, and I highly recommend what Teresa has put in here. I've seen him harassed at swimming pools and so on, and he was totally unaware of what was going on, but he was harassed. I really applaud the expansion of this language. Thank you.
Thank you. See no further discussion. All in favor of the motion to postpone, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
Councilmember Edens, any other opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Councilmember Remy is opposed. Councilmember Galani is opposed. We have Edens, Councilmember Edens, and Councilmember Nyan, you're opposed. Okay. So we have Councilmember Nyan, Galani, Edens, and Remy who are opposed. Any other opposed to the motion to postpone? Councilmember, we need to do a roll call. we're standing here, so I want to get it right. So this is a roll call on the motion to postpone for the purpose of the city attorney to the next council meeting to allow the city attorney to include the language that Councilmember Clark indicated. Please call the roll. A yes vote is to postpone, a no vote is to not.
Councilmember Dodwell,
No.
Councilmember Nyan,
No.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes, to postpone, just making myself clear.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
No.
Councilmember Remy,
No.
Councilmember Farmer,
No.
Councilmember Galani,
No.
Councilmember McCune,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Aye.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Aye.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxie,
No.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to postpone passes. It'll be on the council's next agenda. That takes us to resolution 2021-8. It's before the council, and it concerns Ward 1. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2021-8? Made by Councilmember Brost. Is there a second? Made by Councilmember Flasher. All in favor of the motion to adopt resolution 2021-8, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read resolution 2021-8.
Resolution 2021-8, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the interim city administrator to release an allocation of $5,000 from the 2021 fiscal year municipal budget to the Pond Athletic Association for the purpose of supporting local youth athletics and to further the city's goal of enhancing the availability of recreation programming activities for its residents.
Okay, thank you. Joe, is this let's see, this is from City Council. So, yep, all right. So no comment there. Is there any discussion on Resolution 2021-8? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion to adopt the resolution, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Last, moving to approval of expenditures. Those have been presented to you. I would entertain a motion to adopt the expenditures to get them on the floor for discussion. Does anyone want to make the motion to approve the expenditures as presented? Made by Councilmember Farmer, second by Councilmember Brost. Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember McCune.
Thank you, Mayor. So just bear with me as I walk through this a little bit. I've been trying to do some homework in the background. So my question for this line item was dealing with Hamilton Weber's expenditure. To follow along, if you're looking, was payable number 95154, and it relates to the Salvatore litigation case. As I understand, the settlement has been finalized. I've seen some Ward 3 meetings and I've seen the press releases. My question and what this has been all along was I was trying to get the total expenditure cost for what the city has paid to Hamilton Weber on this one particular line item. I had some hesitations, I've had some roadblocks, but from this evening, from meeting with Mr. Cross, it was my understanding, and you can correct me, that a ballpark figure that the city paid was $29,000 for Mr. Young to oversee the litigation that was handled by an insurance company that also had their own legal counsel and was representing the city of Wildwood. For tonight's expenditure report, as you can see on this line item, and this is for January bills because they always run a month.
So Councilmember McCune, what is it, where are you headed
Behind.
with this? How to get, because we're
So-
going to get a lot of facts. So what is it you're going to want to do? Not approve the expenditures? Or?
So I have a question about the line item, and I would like the council to see the billables on that, or we can approve. I'm okay if you want to approve the full expenditures with removing this for payment until further discussion, and I'm happy to go in a closed session for next meeting, but I'd like to hold the payment for this one particular matter to discuss further, if that's going to push this further for you.
So relative to a closed session to do that, City Attorney Young, would that be the appropriate way to handle that?
As I understand the questions that are going to be posed, yes.
Okay, so what I would suggest you do then is to make a motion to amend the main motion that's on the floor to approve the expenditures and your amendment motion would be to remove those items and to delineate which ones specifically so everyone can know that. Postpone to the next meeting for a closed session discussion prior to approval. And if that gets a second, then we'll handle it. If it doesn't, it'll die on the vine, so to speak. Before we do that, I don't know what you were referring to specifically about roadblocks. I saw some emails about this. I know there was an email about offering to allow you to come to City Hall to look at these rather than publishing these potentially for the world to see, given how technology can work. I don't know if that's what you're referring to as a roadblock. Okay, what were you referring to as a roadblock?
No, I had sent an email, I guess over a month ago, to Mr. Cross, as I was directed to, as a general email asking for, and I had asked in the meeting, what was the total expenditure for that payable number? I was told during that meeting that they didn't have that number. It was part of litigation. So I sent an email to Mr. Cross and Mr. Young. I believe you were copied on it as well, that I was saying that it was part of litigation, that I wasn't purviewed for that number at that time because it was active.
So what was the roadblock?
Well, I was asking for the total number.
Okay.
Mr. Cross felt, which I can share the email, his response, he marked it as a closed record, which I challenged, and it should not have been marked as such from exclusion from a sunshine law request, was all I was asking for was a total number of what I'm saying tonight was 29,000.
Okay. Gotcha.
But initially, that's all I was asking, was not to expend a lot of time. He was trying to put up things that, why am I looking at this? What is the purpose? It was just a number that I have been asked. I'm curious, and then we're still incurring bills on this. So my reason behind this.
The reason he asked you that is because
it's not recent.
Hold on just a moment.
Go ahead.
At that point in time, I think and I won't speak for the city attorney or Mr. Cross, but my recollection from seeing the emails was that it was because there was no pending issue before the council. And so the question was, what was the purpose for having it, number one? But number two, relative to the marking of closed record, I would defer to the city attorney on that. If you want to elaborate why it was marked as closed record, you can, John, but I'm assuming he had good reason for doing that. I don't think it was a roadblock to keep you from getting it. It was merely to protect the city. I'm assuming that.
Mayor, they both apologized and said that was made in error.
I'm sorry.
Both of them already apologized to me and said it was made in error.
Okay, fair enough. Well, if they apologize for it, I still wouldn't consider it necessarily a roadblock. I would consider it an honest mistake, but nevertheless. So your motion is to have these decided at closed session at the next meeting. Is there a second to, and which items are these? I'm sorry, Councilman.
So it's kind of based on what you're saying. I would just like to, for the purpose of the council and for discussion, and it also it goes into other personnel as far as how we review legal bills going forward for other cases, is line item. Bear with me, I'm sorry. It's the Hamilton Weber 95154. The bill is for $2,534.50. I would like to remove this from the approval and for further discussion on a closed session later. I'm sorry.
Is that the only one?
I would like to do that one, and let's just go ahead and include, bear with me, 95156.
Okay, 95154 and lines 95154 and 95156, correct?
Yes.
Okay, anything further on that? Is that it?
No, sir.
Okay.
Those are the only two.
All right, thank you. Is there a second to Councilmember Kuhn's motion? Councilmember Dodwell?
I'll second.
So we have a second from Councilmember Dodwell. Is there discussion on the amendment to the motion to approve expenditures? Councilmember Edens?
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little confused on the motion, and maybe Ms. McCune can answer this. Is the intent to not approve it in the future, or just to examine the process? Because we owe what we owe, you know?
The intent is to discuss it, as I understand the maker of the motion, is to discuss it, I'm not sure in what respect, at this point, in executive session at the next meeting prior to approving.
Can I clarify why? I think the bill is a little.
Executive session to do that.
Oh, I was just going to give her a reason why I'm asking.
Okay.
I just think looking at the line item, the billable hours that were presented for this particular bill on the first line item I mentioned is a little hefty for what the work was performed. And I think that we all need to look at that a little bit more, given that we've already put $29,000 to this account. And this is going to continue a little bit further past the settlement. So I think that we need to look at what's the total charges and what we're being charged for.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Councilmember Galani?
Yeah, I would advocate similarly to what Councilmember Edens just mentioned. I mean, this is a bill that we've already incurred the charges for, and the city should make sure that it's paying its bills on time without any type of fuss. I would say that we should go ahead and approve this expenditure and pay our bill. And if we want to discuss how the law firm bills us or anything to that effect, that can be done as a separate measure with them for future billings. But I don't think going back and arguing over something that we've already incurred and spent is worth any of our time or makes sense. Sorry.
Point of clarification.
Just a second. So you're speaking against the Councilmember Galani, I believe?
Yes, I'm against postponement.
Okay, Councilor McHugh.
Can you please explain to the council how legal bills work, that there are negotiables or removals of time right now as it's pending? Once we pay it, it's not. We cannot review it for what is asked of being paid right now. So in legal bills, you can negotiate rates or charges that are on your pending bill.
Councilmember Rose.
Yeah, I guess I don't want somebody to call me up tomorrow and tell me that I was hot-tempered, but this is just really ridiculous, and I wish we could move on. We're not talking about $100,000 bill. We're not talking about, maybe there was $8 that was misspent, and we're going to spend $5,000 talking about it. So, we got more important stuff to talk about. And Crystal, I don't know who asked you to get these bills, but it's not that important. We're talking $2,500 and $1,100. It's like, come on, let's get on to the important stuff. All right. So sorry, I think John does a good job and I trust our city administrator and I'm good with that. So.
Do I get to
think we-
comment since he used my name?
You've had two. Sorry,
But he specifically called me out.
you've had two.
I
Robert,
think you've allowed that before.
you had two. Sorry. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment as presented, please say aye. Were there any ayes in favor of the amendment?
Repeat what you're asking.
Your motion, which is to amend the
Yes.
the
Yes,
approval
thank you.
expenditures, so that's the amendment, which is to have those two items, those two line items, 95,154, 95,156 discussed in executive session at the next meeting. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
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 Any abstentions? Motion failed. So now we're back to the main motion, which is to approve expenditures. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve expenditures, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I oppose.
Councilor McCune opposed. Any other opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The expenses are approved. And that takes us to adjournment. And before we do that, because before everyone runs off, let me ask what the council, what you would like to do. It is 8:04. We have one item left on the strategic plan that we could cover. We also need to see if there are any comments on the receipt and files that are part of the work session agenda. So we're going to go back into the work session.
Mayor, point of order.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Remy.
We still have miscellaneous tonight. Have my hand up.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see that.
I do
Okay,
too.
my apology, Councilmember Remy under miscellaneous.
I just want to sorry, and I apologize for inappropriately answering a question earlier that was not related directly or germane to
Oh,
the
that's
question.
okay. I got to keep us on the straight and narrow.
No, I appreciate that. I just want to make just a quick 47-second comment here. I really think that the gentleman that spoke tonight, Ezra, was measured, thoughtful. He exercised great maturity in his comments tonight. I really think that what he did was truly fantastic. And I really think he and many of our teens, or all of our teens in our city, are an asset. And so I would just suggest to the Internet Access Committee consideration, and I don't know if this has to go through you, Mayor, or not, but I would just suggest consideration from the committee to expand to include a teenager, because they use the internet in a different fashion than the members of the committee. And I think that that would just be a fantastic gesture, but also it would be a great content expert to bring to that committee. And I might suggest that moving forward. And I think he did a great job and he should be applauded.
And not speaking for or against, but you may recall we, for the first time about a year ago, put a Lafayette student on the Community Outreach Task Force.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Garitano.
I was going to say motion to adjourn.
Okay, we're going to get to that in a second. I guess without objection, Councilmember McCune, I see your hand again. Are you still wanting to talk? If not, if you could pull that down so I don't get confused here.
I just pulled it down. So I did have a question about this for miscellaneous.
I'm sorry. Sure. Hold on just a moment. So if there's no objection to Councilmember Remy's comment, Joe, if you could, without objection to the council, ask the Rural Internet Committee to consider that. If they want to make a recommendation for a membership change, they can bring that back. Is that fair with everybody? Joe, you're good with that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you
No,
talking
Joe
to me?
Vintage.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be glad to present that to the Internet Access Committee.
All right, and Councilmember Garitano, I'm glad that you're good with that too. So, okay, Councilmember McCune under miscellaneous.
I don't know if this will count. So I see that the gray areas don't have numbers and I'm one of them included.
What are you on the?
I'm sorry, the strategic plan.
We're not there yet. We haven't adjourned the main meeting of the council yet.
Oh, okay. So I was just.
Councilmember Dodwell.
I just had one quick question. Since the county has updated the number of individuals that can be in a meeting and or a room at a given time, is it possible for us to go back to our council meetings in the elevated and lower section at this point.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? City Attorney, no.
And I apologize, Councilmember Dowdell, I'm not sure I was following your
So it
question.
has the room limitation of 10 in a room changed in St. Louis County?
No, it has not.
So apparently it has not changed, Councilmember Dowdell.
So we can go eat, which is a good thing, but we cannot hold a meeting where we're separated by more than 6 feet.
There you go.
Ah.
All right, I think that takes us to motion to adjourn, and then we're going to go back into the work session. Councilor Garitano, motion to adjourn you wanted to make?
Yeah, ready
All
to
right, and we have a second from Councilmember Flasher. It's non-debatable. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion to adjourn carries. We're now back into the work session agenda, and I want to ask the council, what would you like to do? No right or wrong answer here. It's now 8:08. We have PZ 918. It won't take long. That's a receipt and file that Joe will probably speak to. And then we have one category left on our strategic plan. Would you like to complete the strategic plan item or just handle the PZ receipt and file?
Get her done.
All right, we're going to do that. Okay,
done.
so we will do that. It will continue in the order of the agenda as presented. But if Joe weren't going to be available for green space, we'd do his first so he could go on his way, but I think he's going to be here for green space. Okay, so we have green space, and just to tee this up, I noticed earlier a couple of things I would suggest for the council's consideration, similar to what you all have done up to this point, and that is items 2 and 3 seem to me they could be combined. Develop an overall plan regarding replacement of trees and update our tree preservation ordinance. I think those are one and the same. If there's no objection, can we combine those? And I think this is a council member Rambo question in particular.
I have a comment.
2 and 3, yes. Councilmember McCutcheon?
Instead of just saying, hold on a second. Instead of just saying, develop an overall plan regarding replacement of trees, can we include the addition of trees as well, replacement and addition?
Well, what I was going to suggest is develop a plan for replacement, addition, and preservation of trees / updates, revisions to section 410, which is our tree preservation. And Councilor Rambo says he's okay with that, and I think these may have come from him. Does any member of the council have any objection to combining those two?
No.
Okay, they are combined. The other thing I noticed, item 7, increase resident participation. That seemed very generic. I'm not sure how that related to green space. I don't know who suggested that, but if there's a little more definitiveness that could be lent to that, I'd like to hear that. Otherwise, I might suggest that be removed because I'm not seeing a connection between that and green space. Okay.
Mayor, I think we get that when we're doing.
I'm sorry?
Mayor, I think that the Department of Planning has done a good job of getting feedback from our residents anytime we have any parks additions or green space additions. So let's just make sure that they continue with that effort by either using our survey tool or on-site reviews or Zoom reviews with the public in the area where the park improvements might occur.
Okay, so I think I understand you to be speaking in favor of just removing that item. Is
Yes,
that correct?
just remove it, but let's continue forward with their current business
Okay.
practices.
Any objection to removing that item? All right, it's removed. Okay, those were my comments. Does anyone else see anything here they want to suggest relative to reprioritization of any of these items or to subcategory additions that we can fold things into, or do you like it as is with those changes? Councilmember McCutcheon.
I think there are two on here that are kind of contradictory. See, maintaining existing parks instead of building new parks. And then another one was develop a park in the northeast corner of the city or quadrant of the city. Isn't that contradictory? Or is that okay? Or should we change that?
Well, that's a good observation. I mean, I think item 4 might be a little more, has a little bit of rhetorical aspect to it. I'm not sure who suggested that, if they want to speak.
I think that was me, Katie
Okay.
Dodwell. And what if we changed it to maintain existing parks for the near term and evaluate the funding and need for additional parks after year 2 or something like that?
So I would suggest, and Councilmember Dodwell, tell me if you would be okay with this. Given that maintain existing parks is number 4 in priority, which is above any new parks, do you think it's implied and good enough that if we just change that to maintain existing parks and take out instead of building new parks, since they're lower in priority, would you be good with that, or do you want to keep it worded the way it is?
I just felt like we needed to be very upfront with our residents that we're not looking to expend additional tax dollars on parks for the near term, the nearest terms, other than to complete the current projects that we've already approved and hold steady for a couple of years. But it's a group decision, not mine.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
I would support that.
And that is what, Councilmember?
Katie's suggestion to reword number 4 as maintain existing parks for the near term, and just change 10 to, you know, reevaluate need for additional parks.
That's a better way to word it, Lauren. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a suggestion to maintain existing parks in the near term as number 4. And what was the suggestion? What did you say, Councilor Eads?
Just to reevaluate need for additional parks in the future. And I say that because I have heard a lot of.
Hold on. I don't want to hear right now why you're saying it. I want to know what you're saying and where is it going? Item 10?
Yeah, item 10 would be to reevaluate additional need for future parks.
Okay. And I think that would handle Councilmember McCutcheon's suggestion. Councilmember McCutcheon, would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, I just, I would like to modify that sort of philosophically. I think it might just be develop a long-term strategy for parks in the city or something to that effect, and just put more strategic thought into what we are going to do. Do we need to develop a park in the Northeast Quadrant? Do we need to do Pertner Park? Do we need to expand or enhance existing parks, et cetera?
So what I would suggest, if there's no objection, is that become the goal, and that these 2 that we're discussing be sub-goals under that.
That'd work.
Any objection to that approach?
I have a question, Mayor Boland.
Councilmember Garitano.
Sure, and this actually is going to be more maybe a question to our Director of Parks, Joe Vunich. We have our Parks Action Plan, and the committee that was working on that, actually Councilmember Kuhn was a member of that prior to service on council. But I don't know the details of the Parks Action Plan because I haven't looked at it recently, but is it in conflict or is it in alignment with what we have here with regards to parks? I just want to make sure all that work that was done doesn't get countered by the new by the discussion here.
Councilman Garitano, it's more in alignment with some of the items identified in this particular goal and sub-goals, such as the Village Green. But again, that group of volunteer residents did not necessarily see green space, parks, and trails as the lowest priority in the city.
All right, thank you, Joe.
And I would expect, just as a practical matter, that if the council agrees to have this new sub-goal of long-term strategic planning, as Councilmember Rambo suggested, and then we place item 1 and item 10 underneath that, that is going to, by definition, entail a look at what that plan was. I can't imagine that we go about it without having the benefit of that, but that would be, those are just my thoughts. So, Councilmember Edens.
Yes, just that if we change the language closer to what Councilmember Rambo said, which I'm not objecting to it, but when you increase it to an entire parks plan and not just a review of new parks, it needs to go up before the Village Green. It needs to be the new number 1. And when I added looking at new parks in the future, one of the things, it's just good to have future opportunities on the radar. There might be land that comes for sale that, we put back for a future park, in 10 years, but we don't want to miss an opportunity because we want to be planning and thinking ahead. And I cannot tell you how many meetings we've sat through where the number 1 complaint of different council members at different times was, I don't have a pocket park. I don't have a pocket park. So thinking about that for the future, I think is a good idea.
Okay, so we have a suggestion to move the new develop long-term strategic plan for parks with its 2 sub-goals, which is currently item 4 and 10, and 10 is reworked to reevaluate need for additional parks as the new number 1. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in favor of doing that? Councilmember McCune speaks in favor of it. Is there anyone against doing that? Okay, seeing no one against, that's what we'll do. Councilor Rambo, do you still have your hand up or you something? Okay.
Yes, I do, real quickly. Director Vunich just startled me by pointing out that enhanced green space is the lowest priority in the city, and I'm not sure that jives with what residents want, and I don't know where to put it or to move it up.
Well, that's a separate matter once we get done with this. If you want to make a motion to move it among the 8 to a different spot.
Is tonight the time to do that, or?
Not until we need to finish the internals of this.
Yeah, so we can do it the next time next session. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
There will be a time to reevaluate that for sure. Councilmember Garitano.
Yeah, the only thing I would suggest, the item that says maintaining existing parks and instead of building new parks, the word maintenance to me means just keeping the current state. And I would like, and I think some council members would agree, they've heard this, we have existing park space that can be enhanced. And by I say that, I mean, there's a big demand for, some sport courts in our city. We don't have that right now. And I wish that maybe it had come up when we were soliciting those items, but I do think that's something that we can enhance existing space potentially with some of those needs that residents have
So
been
without
asking.
objection, it'll say maintain/enhance existing parks. Is there any objection to that? Okay, Joe, I know you've been patient here. Just bear with me. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, my only objection was that then pushes the new pedestrian trail at Long Green Plains Park down in priority list.
Okay, so you're speaking against it?
Yes.
Okay.
Only because of that reason.
All right. All those in favor of moving the new develop long-term strategic plan for our parks, item 1 is with the 2 items underneath it as we talked about, ahead of Village Green, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
Councilor McCutcheon's opposed. Any other opposed? Okay, that's what we're doing. We're moving it. Joe, thank you for your patience.
With that vote and action, my comment isn't germane any longer.
Okay, thank you. All right, so as we have modified it, is there anything further that anyone wants to change relative to enhanced green space, the internal sub-goals? Councilmember Roast.
Yeah, I guess my comment isn't specific to green space, but for the council members that didn't respond on the priorities, is there still a window for them to respond?
Not really. That ship has kind of sailed. If we go down that road, this will end up being a never-ending process.
Okay, I agree. I mean, because the priorities are pretty well set, and I think there's a story here. So I was just a question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilmember Garrett.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I got a question. I know we already just took the vote, but I always value what Mr. Vunich has to say. And I wonder if he had something to tell us that maybe we really should have thought about, given his experience and what he's been involved in. So I don't know, Joe.
I was just going to advise the city council that that group of volunteers that formed the update for the action plan, they created 4 goals, one of which was about acquisitions and future parks. So I would argue there is already a long-range plan in place.
So that's not inconsistent with moving it to that spot then, right?
I don't believe so, but I'm not sure what that sub-goal would be.
Well, that's going to remain to be seen. I think your point would be well taken when we get to how we implement and who's doing it, each of these sub-goals. Councilmember Rambo.
I'm sorry, I meant to take my hand down. I
Okay.
just wanted to hear from Director Vunich.
Sounds good. Councilmember McCune.
So my question relates to what Councilmember Gross brought up. I see on the sheet, the grays includes McCutcheon, Jaskey, myself, and Galani. I submitted the surveys to prioritize this, and I never got an email back that it wasn't accepted or you guys didn't get my tallies. So I'm a little concerned that I wasn't included, nor was I told that my surveys didn't go through.
City Attorney, City Administrator Cross.
I got.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would defer to Mr. Jacqueline. That was a survey monkey that was sent out to each of the council members, and he tabulated them. In fact, we sent them out at least a second time, if not a third, but I won't swear to it that it was out a third time, but there were a couple reminders about filling out that and gave deadlines. And he's the one that summarized it based on that survey monkey. So I would need to find out based on this, the 4 people that are identified. Now, Mr. Jackson gets a buy on this because this started prior to him starting on council. So we can circle back. I'll get together with Mr. Jacqueline tomorrow.
Julian, do you have an answer for that?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I have the SurveyMonkey results up in front of me right now, and there are 12 total responses that were submitted between December 17th and New Year's Eve. And there were 12 total responses, including one from Councilmember Farmer in January, but that was the total responses we received.
Okay. So it appears, so are you saying that we did not get a response from Councilmember McCune?
Correct. Not that we have it received on SurveyMonkey from my end.
Okay. That's your answer.
So when I submitted it, so that's why I'm wondering if there was a glitch in it that you guys didn't get it, because I went through this. So I just want to make sure for the record that I see that there's the other council members, if they had the same problems, that I know that I submitted that.
Did anyone else have that problem?
So I know I participated, but I never got a notice that you guys knew it was blank, that you told me that, hey, Councilmember McCune, your stuff wasn't submitted.
When we ask for things to be submitted by a deadline, we don't then circle back again and let.
No, and I was under the impression I did submit it by the deadline. So I was never told that my survey never went through. That's my argument.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so any other comments or suggestions relative to enhanced green space? If not, as changed, it is what it is. It'll be back before the council with presumption of approval at the next session of this. All right, so that takes us to the last 4 little items here. Let's see, well, they're not little necessarily, but Bluffview improvements, and these are projects not included on the above. Where did these come from then?
That's it's just support information. These are items where we have spent some dollars and we thought it might be helpful just for the council to know that.
Okay. Bluffview improvements, that would be presumably a public works item.
And in fact, there is a line item up there. And so that is somewhat incorrect in that there is a line up in public works for Bluffview. But it doesn't identify these. These are where there's amounts.
So if there's no objection, why don't we include that on that same line?
Right.
And then just add the financials with that are shown off to the
right.
right. Is there any objection by any member of the council for clarity to do that. Okay, so that'll be included. Bellevue Farms, that would be a public works project. Bouquet Road culverts. Alt Road flood mitigation.
These last three, Mr. Mayor, were ones that are in the 5-year plan, but they were not included, or they were not brought out into the sub goal. And so there have been either dollars spent or.
Gotcha. Okay.
We wanted to bring that out.
We definitely appreciate you doing that. So Steve just said, if you didn't hear him, these are items that we've spent some money on, but they were not within the scope of what council members had submitted. So let's take these in reverse in terms of sub goals. Alt Road flood mitigation, we'll take that. We spent 71,666. Does anyone want to add that anywhere in the strategic plan? It would presumably be under a sub item under flood mitigation, erosion control. Does anyone want to make a motion, I guess, to do that?
Please restate that.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm not clear on.
Okay, so we have, I'm looking at the last one here. I'm taking these in reverse order. We have Alt Road flood mitigation. We spent 71,000 and change on it. And it's not, the reason these 4 items are here is because no one on the council mentioned those as being desirable sub goals, but nevertheless they are in the works. So my question is, does the council want to include this particular item? We're going to take each of these individually, the Alt Road flood mitigation, and put it as a sub goal in the strategic plan. And if you do, I would suggest that it go as one of the 3 or 4 items that we added earlier under flood mitigation, erosion control. So does the council want to do that, or not?
I'd like to make a motion that we fit to.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of doing that, please say aye.
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 What we're going to do. Bouquet Road culverts, we spent 21,960. That's a public works item. And I think that would go under probably the street improvements that we had a litany of 5 or 6 items that had the bridges in it and everything else. Is there any objection to moving that item that we spent money on Bouquet Road culverts within that section? All right, seeing none, that's where it is. Bellevue Park, the first one we've already handled. We're gonna add that to the item that's already in there in the strategic plan for Bluffview Park. Bellevue Farms partnership with Missouri Department of Conservation and others. That would be a public works project, and that would go within the, I think didn't we create a category for
That wouldn't be
parks,
public works.
trails, or something of that nature? I thought we did.
That wouldn't be public works. That would be parks improvements.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Dodwell, what was that?
That wouldn't be public works. That's a parks issue.
Well,
That's a relationship building between Friends of Bellevue, MDC, and the city of Wildwood.
It's actually enhancing that space.
enhancing, yeah, it is, but that's not a Wildwood space. We have a lease for it, but it's not.
I know, but we need to come up with some type of work program that either the city's going to help sponsor or we're going to direct them to MDC.
Joe, can you refresh our recollection? What's the nature of that improvement? What's going on with that? It's planned?
The property had been land banked for many years by St. Louis County. After the city agreed to a lease for the property, the process of kind of removing invasives began, and that's what this is for. To basically to remove invasive vegetation that's pretty much taken over the park.
Well, that's certainly enhancing green space.
It is, sir.
What if we move that to the items that include, we just did for our, I guess it would be under the strategic planning, no. Yeah, it would be a third item under the strategic planning, which would include maintaining existing parks and reevaluating the need for new parks, and we would include the Bellevue Farms there as number 3. I'm seeing a thumbs up from Councilmember Dodwell. Does that mean everyone else has a thumbs up? No, Councilmember McCutcheon has a thumbs down. Councilmember McCutcheon, you don't like that?
For the same reason I didn't like the other one. Again, it moves down the pedestrian trail for Green Pines Park to the, even further down the line in priority list.
Okay, fair enough. What's the position of the council? Is there anyone who wants to speak against adding that as a number 3 in the green space category we had earlier, other than Councilmember McCutcheon? Okay, so that's where it's going to be, at least until we talk further. So, okay, council members, that concludes a lot of work on our strategic plan. We are making rapid progress. Thanks to each one of you for staying focused and with me on it. And it was great discussion, and just could not be more impressed by all that. So thank you. That takes us, so going once, twice, 3 times, everything we just discussed is going to come back to the council as modified with the presumption that it is what it is, and then we're going to get into the money. Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I just want to make sure I understand, because I know a lot of us added things to the original list. Is there any chance that we need staff or department heads to review and add anything that they feel like we left out as a council?
I think you can make a case for that, but I think that ship has sailed, and I'm going to predict it's going to be a very hefty road to hurdle to pass to get that done. If we keep doing that, we're going to be quibbling about this for a long time. But you can always do it, you know, if you want. I think that's why we got to this point, did the Survey Monkey and thought it through. So I'm not saying no. I guess what I'd say is presumption is probably no, but give it a try if you want to run it up the flagpole.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're doing more good than harm. And I don't know that it would have to be redone in the mix, because we worked so hard on this, but it wouldn't hurt if there was a single sentence statement and a different caller that came back, you know. I don't know.
Well, at some point we have to have finality, but I appreciate what you're saying there. So we can cross that bridge. All right. So anyway, all of this strategic plan, all the 8 categories, anything you want to, Councilor McHugh.
I just want to comment on the survey itself from my discussion earlier of not being included. I'm in line with the majority of the organization and the discussion, so I don't want to reinvent the wheel to say that Mr. Cross or Mr. Jacqueline spends a lot of time to figure out the glitch. And I think Mr. Galani also said that he did the same and may have had an issue as well, but not sure exactly. So I think I line up pretty well. I just don't want to waste city's resource time trying to redo that, but I do want to put it on the record that I did participate in that. And unfortunately, it didn't get recorded properly.
Thank you for that. Okay, so relative to the 8 categories and all the sub goals, going once, twice, 3 times, any comments? If not, it's coming back as approved. Okay, thank you. Last, Joe, PZ 9-18. I think this was a technical thing that was done at P&Z, but if you want to quickly explain that to the council, so because this is a receipt and file for them, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission at its meeting last Tuesday withdrew this set of petitions from their agenda. The rationale for removing them is that this was the second proposal that came in, and ultimately the petitioner requested that second proposal stay under the moniker of Ackerley Place. So this has no impact on Ackerley Place, the item that the City Council was requested to provide comments to the design team and petitioner. So this was more of a housekeeping effort. And if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joe. Do you have anyone have any questions for Joe relative to that item? All right, seeing none, if no one has anything under miscellaneous, that would take us to, I just want to say thank you again for another meeting of great progress. And I know our residents appreciate that. So if anyone has anything further to mention, we can do that now. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Flasher. It's a non-debatable motion. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, everyone have a great week, and thanks to all our residents who joined us this evening and will watch this.